Text the round robin your questions, comments, wagers. Give us a reason. Sleeper fantasy play, your best alternative line, whatever you have. Text the round robin 757 354 5517.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose cross stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take us past our spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
You are tuned in to the Round Robin with Stephen Murray on Deep End Broadcasting.
Still singing Bible night before I praise all the band. Way up ahead, I see the crowd of flashing blue red lights. I'd rather see the college.
It is football season, officially, Nephew Dave. College football well underway. We get to break down some NFL games today as well. The bulk of the load will come next Sunday when this flagship program for NFL wagering goes all Sunday morning starting at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from our Deep End Studios in the lovely Virginia Beach, Virginia, the United States of America. This is the Round Robin. I am Stephen Murray, Nephew Dave. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
We will also have Dave Del Grande. He comes to us from the San Francisco Bay Area with Field Level Media. He covers the Golden State Warriors. He's Mr. Fantasy himself, and he's senior analyst at Stat Factor. His bread and butter is the NFC West, the AFC West, but all topics are fair game with Mr. Del Grande, and we will go ahead and construct some more big cash tickets, hopefully, with him a little bit later on, Nephew Dave. We did a good fantasy breakdown on last week's show, and honestly, if you new listeners, subscribers, go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel, Deep End 757 Broadcasting. Go ahead and subscribe, but you can catch all of our preseason content here in the last, this is our fifth preseason show, maybe, Dave?
Yeah, about that, or fourth. Yeah, fourth, I think.
Yeah, fourth or fifth. Anyway, you lose track. We've been doing it all August, and if you go back to our YouTube channel, you can catch all of our content, which I think is still relevant for the most part. And what we'll do today with Dave is we'll look at some games ourselves. We'll talk some Survivor Pool here in a minute as well. So let's see here as I'm multitasking to get our program on the old Instagram Live. Here we go. It is football season, Dave. We got to multitask here in the studio when we're under crunch time. So college football, let's start there. Nothing to get too up in arms about in the top 10. Nothing too crazy. But a few fun games for sure out there. The Texas A&M Notre Dame game, I think, the best of the crop when you had those elite matchups yesterday. So although low scoring, it lived up to its height and excitement for sure. I know watching the Florida game, I could almost feel the heat radiating off the TV. They look so hot when it was over 100 degrees, heat and humidity in the swamp. Let's see, your Oklahoma Sooners. They fared pretty well, correctly?
Yep.
Texas, they look good. What stuck out to you, maybe?
So probably the Notre Dame game, I'd have to agree with you, Steve. And I think at least myself, we all kind of, saw maybe a lower scoring battle between two good teams there. And that's exactly what it ended up being. So no shocker there, but another good game. Probably not for you Hokies fans out there.
Yeah,
but,
that was the one I was going to bring up.
Yep,
more local to us than the national audience.
They lose there in overtime.
Double-digit favorite, 13.5.
Yep.
Virginia Tech was laying on the road in Nashville. Looked like they had a fair amount of fans there in the stands as well. There's a lot of maroon in those Vanderbilt stands that seem to lack a punch of the home team support anyway. At times, probably the least supported SEC school, I would say, of the whole SEC. But yeah, Dave, Virginia Tech loses.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising there. And another game that, probably nobody's going to care about this one, but I will say, as far as standing out, Northwestern, Steve, I watched that game. They played Miami, Ohio. Now, not a great team, but I think for the Big Ten anyway, Northwestern's defense may give them a chance to be in some games. They're kind of a downhill, pop you in the mouth type defense. So maybe look out for them to be in a couple more games than you would probably think they would be in, being in that conference.
Well, so I was looking at that game specifically for myself. In fact, I had a small play in part of my little parlays. I actually had the over in that game, which was a terrible bet. But when the breakdown that I was looking at, Miami of Ohio is one of the upper MAC teams. They're going to be one of the better teams in that conference. They've returned a lot of players, and so has Northwestern. And they're well coached. And that's what I got out of that insight as well. So I think that definitely gives them a chance. But how about the stadium sitting on the water, Dave?
That was fantastic.
That's why I was enjoying watching that. We had the 3 TVs on in the sports lounge, and I made sure that the Northwestern game was on for a decent amount, just for the scenery alone. Now, I think that's a loaner stadium. I think
it is.
Is it Evansville? Is just north of Chicago, I think is what it is.
Yep. You could actually see Chicago in the backdrop. That was a really cool scenery there for a football game.
Why wouldn't they just want that as their own field?
I know.
So if you have a chance to maybe go see a Northwestern game this season at home, then go check it out. Although I do think they play at Wrigley Field a couple of times as well, if I do remember.
They're in that one. I guess their stadium's being renovated or something of that sort. But I was pretty impressed right off of Lake Michigan there. That was great. Great scenery.
Yeah, great backdrop. In Washington, the Huskies have a scenic stadium as well. I think everyone says that's the most scenic. But that Northwestern one, it looked like a kind of a lower tier English soccer stadium too.
Right.
So it had a little bit of a charm to it. But overall, just I think good to have football back here the last several days. I think college football dropping the ball a bit. They could have afforded to have 2 or 3 games on this afternoon
easily
to kind of keep the whistle wet instead of having to wait for the lone game tonight with LSU and USC, which comes to us from Las Vegas. But they could have had Texas and Colorado State this afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Or Ohio State and their game could have been this afternoon. So I think dropping the ball a little bit, some of these universities not playing on Sunday and kind of getting lost in the mix on a Saturday. And we saw, what we'll usually see is as far as the big numbers, again, if you took 48.5 with Akron, you covered that spread.
Yep.
I think the score was 52-6 or something like that. So they only won by 46 points instead of 48.5. Let's see, Texas covered their number. I think there were a decent amount of teams that actually covered.
There were quite a few covers this week. But still, I definitely agree with you on that because there was a couple big numbers.
Mississippi, Alabama looks good. I watched Alabama. They looked really good to me. I did not watch Mississippi, but I mean, anytime you're up 49-0 at halftime,
Yeah, you're doing all right.
Yeah. You're probably in pretty good shape for the season. Granted, they were playing Furman and Alabama. Well, Western Kentucky has been a bowl team in past playing Alabama, but I don't think Alabama's going to miss a step with that new coach from Washington.
No,
Kalen DeVore, right?
Absolutely not. That's the best possible scenario with their coach retiring last year is getting a coach like that for them. So it should be a pretty easy transition, I think.
So college football is more of our fun thing. Our specialty, of course, is the NFL. So that's where we're going to make our living is on that. We're not going to try to make that on college football, although we like to have fun with it. The real business at hand comes with the NFL. So let's see. We've gone fantasy heavy, Dave. We've gone bet heavy. We have a couple games to talk about right off of the bat because we can get into that with the Chiefs and the Ravens playing on Thursday night in Kansas City. They will hoist the banner. Lamar Jackson will have to watch it go up and envy Pat Mahomes a little bit. And then on Friday night, the Sao Paulo game in Brazil with Green Bay and Philadelphia. And we'll dissect those games with Del Grande as well when we have him coming up later on in the show. But let me click to the NFL menu, Dave. Let's put Survivor Pool on deck because most everyone kind of knows what they want to do in fantasy at this point. If you haven't drafted, your draft's coming soon. It might be today. Actually, a lot of people like to draft on this Labor Day weekend. Might be tomorrow. Could even be on some of the weeknights. I know Del Grande and those guys wait until Wednesday night, the night before the season, to do it. Could still have some injuries at a practice or something like that. Frequently to screw up a team, right? Or at least a draft strategy. So the longer you wait, the better. But let's face it, we're just days away. So everyone's doing their drafts now. So we've been fantasy heavy. We'll kind of avoid that. If you want fantasy stuff, like I said, go back and click on last week's show. It is still relevant for the season coming up. And all of our content we've produced in the preseason does not have the timestamp on it. All of that is relative to future stuff. So all worth a listen, at least at some point this week on your behalf. I think we put out some good knowledge in that regard. So try to take advantage. But let's talk Survivor. We haven't done any Survivor Pool at all. This would be the one thing that we all want to win, usually a big payday. And we'll just go down the slate of the games, Dave. We'll start with a possibility list, and then we'll try to break it down from there. But Kansas City and Baltimore, no need for a Survivor there, unless you want to take a chance. Some of these leagues have extra buy-ins after Thursday night. So what you can do is take a risk on Thursday, either be in the house or you can lose and rebuy, knowing that your plan was to rebuy all along. Anyway.
Right.
All right. So, and that's going to be the same with the Friday night game as well. So in that regard, I probably will not have a Survivor with a strategy to rebuy. So I'm going to lay off the Ravens and the Chiefs in that regard. I'm assuming you too.
Yeah, I have a couple Survivors that I like to play. Usually never use the rebuy strategy, even though it's not a bad one. So, let's not say that that's a terrible strategy. But I think these are two really good teams that you're going to want to save for down the road.
All right, Green Bay and Philadelphia.
I would lay off that one, I think, too.
I'm going to lay off that as well. This is an interesting one. I've heard some support for Chicago here. Chicago, Tennessee. I'm going to want to see what these two teams look like some more. So no Survivor Pool here for me.
Yeah, Steve. I don't, Tennessee might not be as bad as people think they're going to be. So very well said there. They're going to have to show what they have before we can think about using them.
This one's somewhat tempting to me. I've been a Pittsburgh backer here the last few years. They've done good for me in that regard because we have not been expecting much from them, especially when they had mass offensive line issues. They didn't trust the offensive coordinator as far as they could throw him. I think that's still the case, to be honest. So I'm actually on the fade Pittsburgh train just generally so far to start the season. That being said, Atlanta would be a possibility for me, but I see too much opportunity with their easy schedule down the road. Let's see how Atlanta is. I'll leave this one off the list for now too.
Yeah, Steve, I think the Falcons, we're actually talking about taking the Falcons over somebody now. So kind of weird to say, but I think they would be a possibility. Again, you talked about the easier schedule down the road, so maybe keep them in your pocket as well. But definitely a possibility for the week.
How about this, Dave? Speaking of them, let's see. I took the screenshot yesterday. But because you just said it, we're not used to picking Atlanta, right?
Right.
That's kind of new on our radar. So let me see if I can find this thing I did yesterday. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, here it is. All right, so this is the last time these teams have won their division. Atlanta is in 2016. So it's been that long for them to win that division. Do you know who's the team who has the longest stretch of not winning their division?
You
would think it's an AFC East team, but it's not, just because of the Brady years and the dominance they had winning that division.
I would guess either the Panthers or the Browns.
Very nice, Dave. The Browns. It's been since 1989 since the Browns have won their division. How crazy is that?
Wow.
That's what stuck out to me. The Raiders 2002, the Jets 2002, Dolphins 2008, Chargers 2009, Giants 2011, Colts 2014, 2015 were the Panthers, Cardinals, and Broncos, and then 8 years ago with the Falcons, the Bears 2018, and now as long as the Patriots have dominated that list, right? We now have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19 teams ahead of the Patriots who won their division since New England has.
Wow.
Ain't that weird? So that's been a lot of different teams here in the last few years.
No kidding.
Winning their division. Okay, next survivor list candidate, Jacksonville and Miami. I would say yes to Miami, but I don't know. The humidity, why do I smell a little bit of a sucker here with Jacksonville potentially too, being maybe a little bit better than people are giving them credit for? This one scares me a little bit. So I'll stay away. But even in a tough division that Miami has, I'll have to take a look at their schedule more. Maybe Miami is a candidate, but I'm going to probably lay off this.
Again, Steve, in my mind, I think Miami is one that you have to save for later. They're going to be another better, team that you're going to want to have down the road.
People are going to go heavy on this one. And from everything that I've listened to and the wagering content that I listen to, everyone is automatically calling the Patriots. Yes, I am the homer, but calling the Patriots the worst team in football. People avoiding this as a survivor pick just because they think so many people will take Cincinnati anyway. They don't want to be on that train in case things go sideways. I get the Patriots hype on their continued downfall. Their offensive line definitely looks like a mess to me. But I'm not so sure they're going to be nearly as bad as people are going to give them credit for. This will be the first station in the media. All right, everyone out there in media land, whatever content you're listening to, I know you've heard no one back the Patriots. I'm here to tell you I'm going to back them a little bit here. I'm not saying they're going to be the greatest team in the world. They're probably still bound to go 0-6 in their division, but they're going to play spoiler at some point and be a little bit harder of an out than I think people realize that they will be. And that being said, I'm kind of on the Cincinnati fade train a little bit. I want to see it from Joe Burrow coming off the injury. Jamar Chase, the contract is an issue. How much of a distraction is that? They're going to have to put a new running game together, right? Now, I did draft not Moss, but the other running back they have back there. Chase whatever his name is, on my fantasy team, hoping that he's going to be a blowout running back fantasy-wise. But I don't know. I have a little bit of a lack of a trust in Cincinnati. I generally think 9.5 points is too much in this game. So I'm going to not lay that. And for that reason alone, I'll lay off of Survivor. You probably think differently, maybe. I don't know. But tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Steve. So I'm absolutely going to think differently. And Cincinnati is one of those teams for me where, yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I think that I'm sure enough to go ahead and get them out of the way.
And that's a good reason enough, Dave, too. If you think they're going to have problems down the road with their schedule, you might as well take them now against the easy opponent if you think that's the way to go.
Which
so I can't fault it in that way. You chalk the Bengals off your list, and that's one less sketchy team you have to worry about later having to win you a game.
Now, I will go ahead and agree with you on the spread here. I have it at 8.5, and I still don't really like that very much. It could be
so this number is all over the place a little bit.
Oh yeah,
wow, okay,
and it could very well be a 21-7 game. Well, then that would cover, but nah, I just don't like the Bengals in that regard. Go ahead and play them Survivor.
What's your over-under number on that?
40.5.
Okay, that's what I got to.
And I think that I would take the under in that.
This one would interest me as a road team, which is sketchy to do. That's kind of the cardinal sin, but I don't see how they actually lose this game. I'm talking about Houston at Indianapolis. Houston is only laying 2.5. I think that's my favorite bet on the board. Really, that's all they got to lay on the road. And I get it. But I believe the Texans, they have a lot more weapons than the Colts do. They handled them well in the last week of the season last year that propelled them into the playoffs. It's a division game on the road. That's like the cardinal sin for Survivor pool. But to me, I think Houston is a sure thing to win this game. 49.5 is the total here. It might not get over because I just don't know how many points the Colts can really put up.
Right.
Against the Texans. I see the Colts literally getting 13 to 17 points somewhere in that window. And I see the Texans scoring in the 30s themselves. So go ahead and give me Houston as a potential Survivor pick here, bucking the trend of a road team and a divisional game.
So yeah, Steve, divisional game, you never know what could happen in those. And that gives me enough reason to probably lay off. And also the fact that, I think myself, I have a lot of expectations out of Houston this year. So they're going to fall into that category of a team that I'm going to want to save for down the road as well.
And they do have a first place schedule, so it's not like the schedule gets easier for them. But you can use them on the flip side at home against Indianapolis too, or if Tennessee's in the bad shape with their quarterback or something like that at that point.
Or Jacksonville. I think they can beat Jacksonville.
Right. All right, Vikings and Giants.
That's I don't know about either of them right now. The Giants are supposed to not be very good either. But I think we're thinking the same thing about the Vikings. This could just be a clunker, and I want nothing to do with it.
I don't either. I'm interested in the Giants on this game a little bit. We'll talk more about that next week. That is playing with fire in a nutshell. And yes, I understand it. I'm not sure why Minnesota is a little bit of a favorite at the Giants, though. Justin Jefferson is the best player on the field. I think that is no doubt, right?
Absolutely.
You can put me on board with this one for Survivor, I think, as Carolina should be better, but will they really be that much better? And the Saints are going to win at least some games, and they should win this one at home, I would think. They're laying 4.5, 40.5 right now, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Saints and the Panthers. You know what? The Saints have been a Survivor dagger in my back for many, many years. So why would I change that philosophy now in that regard? Go ahead and stab me in the back again, Saints, but I'll sign up. I'll sign up with you this week against Carolina anyway, more than likely. And you know what? That'll be one less team, hopefully, on my list later on that I need to worry about sketchy-wise are the New Orleans Saints. But I think the Saints can win this game at home anyway.
Yep, let's get the sketchy team out of here, Steve. My two picks that when it is time to submit, the ones, that I'm looking at the most, again, will be the Bengals and the Saints. I'm going to have to make up my mind, between the two of them when it comes to that point, but those are going to be the two that I look at the most. Even though it is a divisional game, I think the Saints can, take the first one at home and get the W.
Yeah, they can start 1-0 and then their season can fall apart.
Exactly.
The Buffalo and the Cardinals is an interesting game, but I mean, you can use Buffalo twice against New England if you'd like. And probably at least, Buffalo has had their number. So even at the home game of Buffalo is probably the way to go in that regard, survivor-wise. Arizona was a spoiler last year. They killed my one ticket that probably would have had a chance to win at the end of the day when they beat the Cowboys. A game that the Cowboys had zero business losing at that moment in time. But I would slightly consider the Bills, but I think there's better opportunity for them later on.
Yeah, they're another one that I would keep until later. Arizona, if they're healthy, and now they've got the new receiver there and Harrison Jr., they could want to come out and sling it and maybe surprise you on week 1. Now, is that probably going to happen? No, but you never know. Let's save the Bills for later.
All right, the Raiders and the Chargers. That's a tough game. I think that's a stay away, right?
Yep. I want nothing to do with that.
Denver and Seattle, I think, is kind of in that same boat.
Yep, I don't like that.
Seattle laid a clunker to start the season last year at home against the Rams. They could easily lose that game to Denver, the way that I see it. Although that could be a fun game. Sneakily under the radar here. 41.5 might be a little bit low for that total. We'll get more into all this next week, but
right.
Generally these over-unders are definitely higher than what they usually are for week 1 for a season. So an opportunity, at least by the odds makers, to get some points next week, and that'll be good for our anytime touchdown tickets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cowboys and Browns, tough survivor game, right?
Yeah, that's not a survivor that you're going to want to take, even though, most people think it's going to be Dallas over the Browns. Again, I think you're going to find better opportunities with both of those teams. So probably stay away from that.
Tampa Bay will get Carolina twice, so probably a better chance for them at a different occasion than against a Washington team that we're not going to know much about. Although I'll say this, new coach, new rookie quarterback. This has all the makings in the world for, just at least for me, Dave, Washington just to get off to a tough start before they kind of get their season going in the right direction. I still think that they can have a decent season. In fact, I do have some tickets as for them as long shots to even win that division. But just even if I'm super high on Washington, that's a tough spot. Heat and humidity too with Tampa Bay. Baker is a veteran. This is the one team that really is close to the same team that they had last year.
Yes.
And they were a playoff team. In fact, they beat the Eagles really well in the playoffs as well. I could see Tampa Bay winning this game by double digits. We'll talk about that next week. But I would consider them for survivor. But again, Carolina is on their radar as well.
Yeah, that's a big question mark is what Washington is right now. So, yeah, you got Tampa. You could maybe take them in this spot, maybe consideration for them. But again, I think there's going to be better opportunities for them as well.
All right, we're talking about survivor pool. Again, a couple games left. Rams and Detroit, that's a stay away, right?
Yeah.
And the Jets and the 49ers are a stay away as well, I assume.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I'll say this, though. The Jets are taking a lot of money, and now this line is down to 3.5, and I get the San Francisco line issues, and the Jets do have some defense. This Jets team probably better, but this is the Rodgers first game. I mean, this is almost like, as long as he's been around the team, it still is the first game.
Right.
How clean are the Jets going to play in this game? And I remember when Favre went to the Jets and they played on the Monday night, and everyone thought that would be a real competitive game against the Philip Rivers Chargers. The Chargers just came out and blew their doors off early. San Fran is the kind of a team that can put a hurting on you really, really fast as well. So buyer beware of the Jets hype for Monday night is all I'm going to say about that. And again, we'll tease that for next week. We got a whole slate of games to go through next Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Round Robin Deep End Broadcasting Network. Okay, so Survivor picks for you, Dave, are?
They're going to be
subject to change.
Subject to change, but right now my serious consideration is going to Cincinnati and New Orleans.
I like the New Orleans one myself. I'll consider Tampa Bay, and I'm going to consider Houston as well. I'm going to take some more looks into those three schedules specifically and kind of narrow it down from there. But I'll look at New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and I will look at Houston for Survivor. All right, let's get to some. Dave, what is the play you saw? The Kings game. Since we do have LSU and USC tonight, you have an LSU prop you told me about.
Yes, yeah,
the pays 20-1. So if you want some action to start today,
it was LSU on the money line,
right?
Jefferson anytime touchdown, Malik Neighbors anytime touchdown, and there was one more. Oh, Jamar Chase anytime touchdown. So it's a LSU favored Tiger Kings bet.
If Chase doesn't play, I'm assuming they'll void him.
Yeah.
You got to figure he's got to get in uniform still with the contract dispute. But you got to assume he's going to suit up for week 1 against New England. All right. 2 games on the slate, Dave. The world champion Kansas City Chiefs. I can see all the anti-Swifty social media content popping up in my head right now. The Chiefs laying 3, 46.5. Last time we saw these two was in the playoffs. Defensive game, lower scoring game. The Chiefs made the Ravens look like fools for the most part, I would say. In that game, the Ravens probably made themselves look like fools more than anything, as they were devoted to the passing attack. That didn't seem to work out for them against Kansas City. But it's going to be a warm night, 87 degrees, dawn of a new season. Things can kind of get herky-jerky week 1. You got to shake off the rust. Again, 4 of my better plays yesterday in college football were on alternate unders, which all came through. So I kind of think about this game in that regard too. I mean, could be a little bit of a stink fest. Now I get it. There's good talent on both sides of the ball. And man, trying to go bet an under against Patrick Mahomes has been a good bet. But man, he does play angry. And the Ravens can move the ball as well. But my first thought is to go under in this game, 46.5, just because it is week 1. It is the opener. I think the better play to me is just Kansas City to win this game, though, overall. And I think 3 is fine to lay. I think they probably win this game. In my head, I had it 24-13, somewhere in that neighborhood like that. But I think they raise the banner with some success against Baltimore. I don't see this as a super high-scoring game. Will I be shocked if that happens? Not really.
Right.
I can't be shocked if that would happen. There's too much talent on the field. But I'm going to lean Kansas City here with the favorite. Not my favorite play on the board by any stretch of the imagination, but this is what we have for Thursday night. What are your first initial thoughts on this one?
First initial thoughts, and again, subject to change as we take longer looks at it throughout the week. Two really good teams, and I think two teams that are going to have, pretty good defense this year as well. Under here of under 42.5 plus 145. The number's not exactly, sexy, but it is a plus number, and I think, that the score will land somewhere in between there. Under 43 points, I really, really like.
All right, so you do like the under with me in this game.
I do.
All right, anytime touchdowns for this game. Derrick Henry minus 135, Kelsey minus 105, Pacheco plus 100. I like Pacheco to score in this game.
I love both of them, Henry and Pacheco.
I could see that. That parlay pays just 2.5 to 1, but that's a fun little way to approach it. Xavier Worthy is plus 160. Mark Andrews plus 170. Lamar's 2 to 1. Zay Flowers is 2 to 1. That's actually a good price on Lamar.
Yes, it is.
They're just taking I think they're just figuring Henry's going to get the ball when they get down there. But man, that's when Lamar fakes it to him and scrambles in there, right?
Yep, exactly.
Mahomes is plus 410. Justin Watson plus 400. Rashad Bateman plus 410. Justice Hill 5 to 1. There's your Isaiah Likely plus 550. Sky Moore plus 650. Kansas City defense 7 to 1. Baltimore defense plus 750. So if you have to pick a pair of scorers, Dave, the running backs.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny because the running backs are the ones that I like the most. But as for calling an under in this game, I love a lot of these guys to score too in that same sentence. So it's tough, but I'll stick to my guns on the underplay. That was the first one I liked, but I have a plus 185 number for Worthy, and that's somebody again, being an Oklahoma fan, watching him at Texas, having to play him every year. I know how good that he can be, and now he has a quarterback like Mahomes. I have some expectations for him this year, and plus 185 for him to score. You could probably sign me up all day.
Let's see here. 2 touchdown scores. We'll take a look at that, since that's what we always do too. Derrick Henry's 5 to 1. Kelsey plus 650. Pacheco 7 to 1. Rashee Rice 10 to 1. Xavier Worthy 12 to 1. Mark Andrews 14 to 1. Lamar is 16 to 1. Zay Flowers 16 to 1. Again, if you're gonna be picky with a 2 touchdown score, I think you gotta go with the running backs, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Both of them could do it. And you'll probably get a better number with Pacheco. So that's probably the one I would play just for the number wise.
And I think if you're want to really have some fun, maybe just put even a couple bucks down on Henry and Pacheco to get 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
26 to 1 for Henry, 37 to 1 for Pacheco. So Pacheco would pay $2 would win you 74. That's just a fun little side little wager. You're going to spend your $2 7-Eleven lottery ticket, right? Might as well try to win $75 on the trifecta for Pacheco. And if you are a new listener or subscriber to this show, or viewer, since you're watching us, the listener is my old school radio days coming out, Dave. But if you are watching that, this is the gist of our game, as we are trying to invest the minimum to make the maximum, and you'll hear us allude to the old 7-Eleven lottery ticket a lot of times. Why spend $10 on the lottery ticket that might win you $20 max at the end of the day? 50 if you're really, really lucky. If you're super, super lucky, once in a while, $500 or $200. But right here on the round robin, we can put down $10. We can find 2 or 3 or 4 plays and turn that into a couple $1,000s for you a lot more often than your lottery scratcher ticket. So that is the purpose of the show. Let's see here. Passing yards for these guys. Mahomes is 258.5. Lamar Jackson, 217.5. Their alternate numbers, Mahomes for 300 yards is plus 235. And if Lamar is going to get to 300, a nice payout at plus 680. The alternate passing touchdowns is one I like to look at as well. One touchdown for Mahomes is minus 1,200. 2 touchdowns minus 192. 3 touchdowns plus 205. And they really think he's going to light it up. 2 touchdowns for Lamar is at plus 128. 3 touchdowns passing for Lamar plus 490. Any of those wet your whistle, Dave?
Well, I have a plus 130 for over 1.5 touchdown passes for Lamar. Numbers not, real favorable for Mahomes. On mine here at over 1.5 passing touchdowns is minus 185. I don't really care for that. I think you'd have to go yardage here. Again, we're gonna think back to that all under that might be played. So maybe a little bit more of a defensive struggle. And now with the run game with Jackson himself and Derrick Henry, maybe he's not passing the ball all that much. So quarterback props here are not really, really doing it for me.
Yeah, I think I'm off that train too. It's sketchy. How about this? Isaiah Pacheco, 4-1 for 100 yards rushing.
Now that's not bad.
He's plus 280 for 90, plus 198 just for 80 yards rushing, Dave. I think that's a good low-hanging fruit number, 80 yards for Pacheco. I think he gets 100, even 110 yards is at plus 580. 125 is plus 880. On the flip side, Derrick Henry, I would take him up to, 70 yards probably, or 80 yards, minus 106 for 70 yards for Henry, plus 144 for 80 yards for Henry. But if you do something like a parlay with Pacheco to get 110 at plus 580 and Derrick Henry 80 yards on the ground at plus 144, you're now getting paid 19-1 on your parlay for those two. So $10 to win 190 on that. And I think even a better way to do that might be Henry just for a touchdown and the Pacheco rushing yards.
Yeah, there you go.
And even a Pacheco touchdown in there. So if we do Pacheco for 110, and I'm going to go back to the anytime touchdown scores with these guys. I'll click Henry on. I'll click Pacheco on. 16.5 to 1. So
right.
33-2. Pacheco for 110. Henry and Pacheco for a touchdown. $10 down went to you $165.11.
I think I'm going to probably end up playing something like that, Steve. I'm going to go with a Henry touchdown and then Pacheco either at 70-plus yards at plus 135 or bump it up to 90 and get plus 350 out of it. I think those two combinations right there, I think the running props here are going to be the way to go, and there's going to be some fun stuff in here for this one.
Right. I'm going to take a look at the same thing. I like that Pacheco number for 100 at 4-1 anyway, for sure.
Now, if he can get to maybe, 110 plus, I have a plus 800 number. So that might find its way somewhere. That's a little bit better. That's an interesting number if, he can have a decent game and, goes for 112, which isn't unimaginable.
No. I think that 10 yards is when you're running that good. You're running that good. So
right.
What's the difference to me between 100 and 110? Well, it's probably the difference in the payday a lot of times, but I get your point there. For the extra 10 yards, you might as well juice it up a little bit more.
That's kind of how I feel about that.
All right. Best play on the board for you overall is the under.
I really like that under 42.5.
I'm going to take the under, and I'm going to take the Chiefs if you need that full side. If you want to take the Chiefs to win by double digits, that's the only other thing I would look at with the alternate spread. Let's see. Chiefs minus 8.5 plus 250 minus 9.5 is plus 260. Now that's not much of a difference on this book. It's only 10% juice of a move from 250 to 260. So in that regard, you just take the plus 250 at minus 8.5 get that whole extra point.
Yep.
So play it that way. If you want the Ravens on an alternate number, if you think that they can win by double digits, you're going to get plus 440 to win by 9.5. Plus 420 just to win by 8.5. So again, that would be the same type of deal. Just take the minus 8.5 at plus 420. Don't do the 9.5. If you want to jump above that, then minus 10.5 is plus 520, minus 11.5 plus 600. Let's see, the Chiefs to win and the hometown super blowout special, Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift style. The Chiefs to win by 20 points is at plus 830. All right, next game on the board is Green Bay and Philadelphia. Fun game potentially.
Interesting
Sao
game.
Paulo, Brazil. How is the field going to be? The Corinthians Stadium, I believe, is called something like that. 64 degrees and cloudy is the forecast, so not too bad.
No.
But Philly laying less than the field goal, minus 2.5, over under 48.5. We last left these two teams. Philly bowed out of the postseason early after stumbling down the stretch of the regular season, losing terrible games to teams like the likes of Arizona. They fired their coordinators, right? 2 new coordinators now. Kellen Moore is in at offense of coordinator. When we last left Green Bay, they were coming off an exciting playoff run, to say the least. Fun game against Dallas. That won us a lot of money in the studio that week. We had a great week that playoff round when Green Bay beat Dallas. They put up a great fight at San Francisco. Just came up short of the NFC Championship game. Just a bona fide Super Bowl contender, you can say at this point. They have a ton of receivers. Josh Jacobs now in at running back. Jordan Love, a year older, year wiser. And here's Philly. They got Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown, is he going to stay happy the whole season? Jalen Hurts seems like he's unstoppable when he runs the ball right up the middle for a touchdown. Philly and the Packers. Fun game in Brazil. Probably would be a funner game in Lambeau Field. Probably would be a funner game in Philadelphia.
Right.
But Brazil makes it interesting, to say the least. And it gives us Friday night football as well. This game is on Peacock, so you'll have to stream it. But right now, Philly minus 2.5 and 48.5. Now, my first instinct was to say, just take this over. This is going to be a fun game. Could be a shootout both ways. I'm hesitant to say that only because it's week 1 and the, same reason for Baltimore and the Chiefs. Got to shake off some rust. It's going to be a little bit lower scoring than you would think that it would be. You got to figure everyone's going to be on the over in this game as well. Probably everyone's going to bet Philly. Most of the national media I've heard, it seems like if there's 2 automatic things, it's New England's going to be absolutely terrible and Philly should win the NFC East. So there's a lot of Philly backing in the national media. I don't know if I'm necessarily buying it. Dave Delgrandy on our show, not high in Philadelphia at all. He's the one guy who talks about that, and he'll talk about that some more when we bring him on in a bit. He is high on the Packers. I do like the Packers. They're a fun team. 48.5 points is a lot of points, Dave, but I think they can actually get there too. Am I dying to go play an alternate over here? Probably not really. I could see this game going under for sure. If I were to have to bet this like it was a playoff type of game, Dave, I would take the over and move it actually down to like 43.5 or 44.5. That's why I got some success in the playoffs last year on some of these 3 and 4 game parlays, is actually moving the lines to make it easier for me to get over. But I think what I'll do here is just take a shot on Green Bay. They're plus 2.5, plus 128 on the money line. Fun game. I don't know. I could see a little bit of a rough start for Philadelphia. This is a tougher one to handicap for me at the end of the day. I think it's higher scoring. I'll just say Green Bay wins this. Something like 31-28, 34-31, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think they put on a good international show at the end of the day here. Give me Green Bay in a squeaker. Fun game. What do you like?
So that was kind of my thoughts as well, Steve. I do like the over in this game. I'm definitely one of those people. I would move it up. I like 51.5 for plus 128. Again, not the biggest number. I think I would like maybe like plus 140 for that number, but it is what it is at plus 128. But I could see these two teams getting their points. Philly, I think, is going to have a nice offense this year. They've got all the pieces for that. Defensively wise, though, I think they're going to give up some points too. So let's keep that in mind. I think Green Bay can, try and keep up. I may flip-flop that score. Just the teams, from the scores that you said. I think, the Eagles maybe by 3 is something that I'm taking a look at as well. So maybe they do cover that number. I probably wouldn't give them, a number that I always like to try and do is 5.5. You usually get a plus number out of it to win by 6. Do I want to do that here with the Eagles? Probably not. Could they do it? Yes. I don't think I'm quite that comfortable yet. I think this is a good test for the Eagles right off the jump. So we'll see what happens, Steve. But give me 51.5.
All right, let me plug in this kind of random parlay here that I'm going to come up with, which I'm going to tie into the Thursday night game. If I'm going to take the Echo at plus 400, I'm going to put that on the ticket first. So let's look at the Philly and Green Bay passing attack, because I do like the quarterbacks, I think, in this game to have a decent output of passing yards.
Right.
So I'm going to look at the baseline of Hurts is 240.5. The baseline for Love is 256.5. I think they both exceed that number. So if I want to have a super exciting, fun ticket, I'll go ahead and pump Hurts up to 300 yards at plus 390. I'll go ahead and pump Jordan Love up to 300 yards plus at plus 235. And now I have a ticket with Hurts, 300 yards, Jordan Love, 300 yards passing, and Isaiah Pacheco, 100 yards rushing. $10 now pays $542.
I like that.
That's not too bad.
No, not at all.
So we'll go ahead and do something like that. I feel like I should almost just put it in right now. I will. All right, we're locked in.
Nice.
$11 to win 640. And as far as the touchdowns go, too, I think these are fair game as well. You're getting Hurts for 2+ touchdowns minus 112. 3+ touchdowns is plus 370. The problem here is they get to the goal line. You know what's going to happen. He's going to run it in. But Jordan Love at 3+ touchdowns at plus 225, or even take a flyer on Love at 4 touchdowns passing, plus 750. But 225 would be the safer number. But I do like the quarterback props overall here, Dave.
Yeah, Steve, I could get down with some passing props here. So Hurts with his legs, Jalen Hurts for 2 touchdowns is plus 100 for passing touchdowns anyway. Something that I could definitely look at. I think there's going to be good possibilities here when this game starts.
If the passers are going to do good, that means the receivers will do good as well. I got Christian Watson at 50 yards at plus 162. Jaden Reed for 50 yards is at plus 128. So I think I can throw them both on a ticket as well. We'll take A.J. Brown for something like 60 yards at minus 210. Those three guys alone will pay plus 717. So $20 can win you 140. That's not the craziest thing in the world.
No.
Just 50 yards for Watson, 50 yards for Reed, and 60 yards for A.J. Brown overall. In fact, if we do get some sort of a risk-free same game parlay bet, that might be something I'll throw in there. You can also actually lowball the other guys here. If we do Reed for 50, Christian Watson for 50 again, A.J. Brown for 60 yards receiving. We'll go back out to the Kansas City game again. Make this a little two-night special type of dealio. We'll throw in Henry for a touchdown, Pacheco for a touchdown. Now we're getting 28-1 on this ticket. So if Pacheco and Henry both score for you, then you just need those receivers
to get their yards, and that's a nice one. I like that.
Get their yards, and you can even just reboot if you don't get the touchdowns. If you want to, just play the ticket all over again with something else, or just singular by itself. But if you want to go ahead and throw an alternate rushing number for Pacheco and actually just lowball that to let's just say 80 yards for him instead of 100. So 80 yards for Pacheco, a touchdown for Pacheco, touchdown for Henry, 50 yards Watson, 50 yards Reed, 60 yards A.J. Brown. We are now looking at 64-1 odds. So $10 wins you $639. All right, that's not the worst. We can live with that, I think.
Yeah. Invest the minimum to make the maximum.
Invest the minimum. There's your $10 7-Eleven ticket, people. We're going to turn that into $639 on that. Low-hanging fruit kind of type of dealio.
And that ticket's got to be more exciting than a scratcher, right?
Yeah. It lasts a lot longer, right? That's what she said. Let's see here. Anything else? There's no kicking props available. I would maybe take a look at the Kansas City kicker for his field goals over if you want something straight. But we don't have those on the board yet.
Now, I'll be getting into that next Sunday, Steve.
Right. Yes.
Giving the kickers some love.
And let's see, anything else here? The rushing props for Green Bay and Philadelphia aren't going to do it for me, but the baseline for Saquon, 64.5. Josh Jacobs, 65.5. Hurts is at 35.5. I'll tell you what, if we can get a alternate number on Love's rushing, that'd be something I would take a look at because he will scramble. One of the plays we like to do, and we'll get this number closer to game time, but the quarterback rushing props is something we seem to have a lot of fun with on the show too, Dave, right?
Yes.
C.J. Stroud was a very low number for us last year. A lot of times that he went over that pretty quickly.
Well, even if you get guys that don't usually do it, they have such a low number with such a good, payout next to it. All they got to do is do it one time. They're asking for 8.5 or 13.5. Again, because they don't do it a lot, you get these good numbers. But they're achievable numbers if they can just do it, maybe 2 to 3 times when they're getting pressured or they have to do it.
Teams to scramble, yeah. Like Jacoby Brissett will be a good one, probably.
Oh, yeah. He'll probably have some great numbers.
All right. Anything else on this Packer-Eagle game?
No, that's going to be a good one. I'll be looking forward to that on a Friday night, so that'll be fun. But I'm gonna stick with the 51.5. I think is my best play.
We'll look at the 2 touchdown scores for this. Barkley plus 470, Hurts plus 650, Jacobs plus 700. I mean, pick your poison. Any of these guys could do it. Jaden Reed 13-1, Devontae Smith 12-1, AJ Brown's 8-1. That's an interesting one for me, actually. A Pacheco for 2, AJ Brown for 2 would be interesting to me.
Yeah.
Or Derrick Henry for 2, AJ Brown for 2. Christian Watson 17-1, Dallas Goedert 20-1, Romeo Dobbs 22-1. There's Dontavian Wicks 41-1. He has been a fantastic little sleeper receiver. He's paid off on some tickets last year himself. He had a big one for me as the last player needing to win. Luke Musgrave 39-1. Let's see. There's Kenneth Gainwell. He's still around 55-1. Jahan Dotson 70-1. The Philly defense 70-1. The Green Bay defense 100-1. Jordan Love 80-1 for 2 touchdowns. If there is a 3 touchdown chance here, I would say AJ Brown's probably your most likely candidate at 50-1, or maybe Saquon 23-1, or even Hurts 34-1. Those would be your guys for 3 touchdowns in this game. Green Bay's just going to spread it around a little too much. All right, final thoughts on this, Dave.
I'll be looking forward to it. I have an interesting because maybe we're not quite there to the game yet. My 2 touchdown scores are locked out. I'm sure they'll give it to me closer to game time. But I do have an interesting one, Steve, before we go. We'll see what you think of combined TDs. Dallas Goedert, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks to combine for 2 touchdowns, plus 300.
So just 2 touchdowns from the 3 of those guys?
And any combination.
Interesting.
That's 3 guys to, give you a chance. They just got to score once, 2 of them. And they're going to be used in their offenses.
That's Goddard, Wicks, and who else?
And Reed.
Jaden Reed. Okay.
And that's, a decent little payout right there. Plus 300 for, 2+. And you get different combinations.
Again, for you new listeners, viewers, subscribers, there's going to be fun stuff all throughout the menus. Use your tokens, your profit boost. Use your free bets. Don't think that there's any sucker, ties to it. Like, you're signing your life to the devil or nothing. It's literally just free money or free boost on your juice to increase your payouts if you do win. You're almost an idiot if you don't do any of that kind of thing.
Right.
Those will add up and cut into your margins. Yes, NBA, I won $100 free bet for like $6,000 in the NBA playoffs when the Timberwolves. Let's see if I can recall this one. It was game 1 of the T-Wolves against the Nuggets. It was 30 points for Edwards. It was 25 points for Karl Anthony Towns, or 20 points for Towns, and 15 points for Naz Reid. And Naz Reid went on a 13-0 run by himself in the 4th quarter to get to 15 points and cash that ticket.
Nice.
So that's all free stuff that probably wouldn't have happened without these offers. So make sure you use those on whatever sports book you're operating with. All right, Dave, that will do it for me and you. Here's a score if you want to update in soccer. Liverpool 2, Man United 0. Dave said we should put $100.
Should have did it.
Liverpool right before the game started, and that would be an easy winner at this point. Let's see, does Salah score? Salah has not scored, and he's still plus 290 to score. So maybe take that if you want some second half action. All right, Dave, that'll do it for us. College football tonight as well. LSU, USC. Any thoughts there?
That should be a good one. I'm going to give the edge to LSU. But again, it's week 1, so you never know. But I think it'll definitely be worth watching.
It's an SEC powerhouse. Don't be shocked if they take USC out behind the shed.
Right.
And give them a whooping is what I'll say. All right, Dave, what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and queue up our man. Let me get his stats up here on the screen. We will go to our man on the West Coast. He is with Field Level Media. He is a senior analyst at Stack Factor, and he is the founder of MrFantasy.com himself. He covers the Golden State Warriors. The AFC West is our bread and butter. The NFC West as well gets the same amount of focus as the AFC West. So we will break those down through the course of the season. But for now, what we'll do is we'll look at these two games. We'll come up with some receiver scoring tickets and what other topics we can discuss with Mr. Dave Del Grande. College football. I think in the past, not necessarily your cup of tea, not your expertise. I think just my impression is you like other sports a little bit better than college football, maybe. You can expand on that if you like. But here we are. We got a full slate of weekend college football, and now we got a 12-team playoff. I think I was in the studios of WBNR Radio, Blacksburg, Virginia, back in 1998, drawing up little 12-team brackets myself. I'm not sure what's taken so long here 26 years later, but here we are. We finally have a playoff. So your thoughts on that as we enter a new football season?
Well, I think it's a great thing. I think that, for a first weekend of the season, if you don't want to count last weekend, there are some really good matchups this weekend that are attractive. I mean, I'm not the biggest college football fan, but you put LSU and USC playing each other, Texas A&M playing Notre Dame, Clemson playing Georgia. I mean, these in the past, you got to see these matchups once in a while, but now because of the playoff system, it's not like, oh man, and we schedule a game like that and we lose on the first week. The season's over. I mean, we don't have a chance to win a championship anymore. Now that's not the case. Now you could lose. Clemson could lose this game to Georgia and still bounce back. Win its conference and still have a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, 12 teams, basically 5 conferences. You win a conference, you're going to get in. You finish second in one of these major conferences, you're probably going to get in. I just think I think the end of the season is going to be fun, but to me, equally important is the beginning of the season becomes more fun.
Right, and some very, very good matchups. Which one do you think you're looking forward to the most?
Well, just strictly on a regional basis, the Pac-10, I'm old enough to call it the Pac-8, Pac-12 no longer exists, obviously, but these are my teams. This is where you have a local high school star in Northern California. You aspire to go to USC, UCLA maybe. In more recent years, you go to Oregon or Washington. And so, I've become, I'm a Cal guy, but I'm not your traditional, I love Cal and I hate Stanford. I hate USC. I hate UCLA. No, I'm a Pac-12 guy. I'll root for the Pac-12, the old Pac-12 teams, wherever they play. So for me, I find the USC LSU game the most attractive.
And Dave Del Grande, of course, is a Cal graduate, so maybe we need to get him some ACC gear, right?
Funny because I have an old college buddy who lives in Kentucky, and actually, he grew up in the D.C. area. Came to Cal and then, through various jobs, ended up moving to the Cincinnati area. And, but, we've lost touch. He used to live in Montana. We'd get together and we'd golf and do things during the summertime. But, the difference between going to Montana and going all the way out to Cincinnati, probably haven't seen him in 10 or 15 years. But just, the first thing we talked about was, oh my goodness, we got to get together with, a Cal Louisville game or Cal Virginia Tech, as you mentioned. I've never, I've never seen a sporting event in most of those sites. I covered a lot of professional sports. So I've been to Charlotte. I've been to D.C. I actually went to watch a Cal game once at Tennessee. But I've never seen, I've never been on the Duke campus, never been on the North Carolina campus, Clemson. So it's even at my advanced age, I look forward to perhaps getting back together with him, going to watch one of those games. Heck, it could be this basketball season.
Blacksburg's a beautiful town too, if that ever comes across your radar. Southwest Virginia, beautiful country out there. That's where I kind of got my career started. Post school, I guess reality kind of set in for me last night when I was watching the who was on the Big Ten Network. It was the Western Michigan Wisconsin game. Was that right? I guess that was on Fox. No, so it would have been Michigan State and Florida Atlantic, and they were advertising for the games the next day, and they had on Oregon is going to be on the Big Ten Network, and then they're going to have Big Ten After Dark coming live from Washington. It's kind of weird to see that all on TV.
Yeah, in fact, funny you should mention that because when I was talking to my buddy from Kentucky 2 days ago about the Cal's first game here against UC Davis, the team they played a million times, but it's an ACC game, and he gets the ACC network, and he was looking forward to seeing that game that he wouldn't normally be able to see in that part of the country. But no, it's an ESPN Plus game. So already he's disappointed in the schedule. But yeah, no, it's a whole new world.
All right, in the Bay Area, a couple big contracts finally go down. Now, let me ask you this. I almost feel like it's a whole lot to do about nothing with the Brandon Ayuk deal. We'll start with him first. Actually, let's start with Curry first. Then we'll get into the football. How about Curry and that big 1 year, $60+ million contract with him? From your perspective, just go ahead and break that down.
Yeah. But tomorrow somebody else will sign for 63. I mean,
right.
If nothing else in the NFL, this is kind of what we learned is that what's your hurry to sign a contract, because the more guys who signed before you, the more money you end up making. So let's wait another couple of weeks and you get more than they do. Yeah, the Curry thing to me is more about Curry is, in my experience in sports, about as good a guy as you would ever want to have representing your organization, your hometown, your region, whatever it is. It isn't just about him being a great basketball player. There are a lot of great basketball players, but in Curry's case, it's important, as far as I'm concerned, that the Warriors do something that's going to keep him around 10 years from now, not as a player, but as an ambassador, whatever it is. He might be the general manager of the Valkyries, the new women's professional team in town here, or he could be the next athletic director at Cal, or he's just somebody who's so beloved in this area. And he's not a native Bay Area guy. Hardly anybody. All we knew about him was he was this kid at Davidson who scored a lot of points, before he got drafted by the Warriors. But he's become as loved here as any athlete. I'm not even sure who would be number two. I mean, someone like Buster Posey, or somebody like that. And I think the Warriors see that he can be as valuable to the organization after he retires as he is right now. But let's be honest, this Warriors team is not very good all of a sudden. They're going to be scrambling for the last playoff spot, just like they were last year. And that'll be the case, I'm sure, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whenever he retires. So, and when you spend that kind of money, well, what does that mean in the NBA? Well, it just means you're less likely to have money just to be able to afford another free agent. And so giving him that kind of money probably hurts the team in some way. And, I mean, if he took half as much and gave half that money to a second free agent who came in and played with the Warriors, maybe they'd have a better team down the line. I'm not criticizing him for it. But the point is, to me, this does nothing for the Warriors as a contender, as a team, as a more likable team or whatever. It's all about, hey, look, you're a part of our family, and we want you to be a part of our family until you die. And, here's our gesture to you. Yeah. And I think it was a good one. And I think that hopefully, he sticks around long term.
A token of appreciation.
Yeah.
In a sense. Okay. All right. The Brandon Ayuk deal, they sign him in. So he's linked in now with the 49ers, I think for 5 years, right? Decent part of the contract guaranteed, not the whole thing. I think 125 million, 130 million, somewhere in that range, if I'm thinking about that correctly off the top of my head. But it seems like if this is what they're going to do, they just could have done this a while ago, or IU could have signed. I mean, is this maybe even a little bit of the case of, I don't care about the preseason. I can hold out. No sense going out there getting hurt. I can sit this thing out. Sooner or later, we'll get this thing signed, and I'll be in a 49ers uniform. Worst case scenario. It just seems like this could have been done a while ago. They kind of drag it out, and here we go. Contract signed.
Yes, I think that is definitely a part of it. In certainly football, we see this more than in other sports, but we see this in other sports as well. People keep telling us that the preseason, we're cutting back on the number of games, we're limiting the number of times you can hit each other, these kinds of things. We're being told time and again that the preseason, the training camp isn't all that important. And so I think the players are starting to believe that. Well, if it's not important, then why am I even showing up? And I think that was a big part of it here. I mean, to me, this signing in some way is, I don't know. I mean, I spoke about this before. I feel the same way. Now that the college football season is starting this weekend, if you watch college football today or whatever you want to watch a game, a team like Georgia, USC or LSU, and you see the quality of wide receivers that they have on their roster, and you look at it and you say, wow, what's the difference between this guy and Brandon Ayuk? Probably not all that much. Heck, between those three teams, I'm guessing that they've got at least 2, maybe 3 receivers who are at Ayuk's level or better, already. And so these wide receiver has become a glamour position in college football, much like running back was 30 years ago. Now, if you're this great athlete, you're as likely to play wide receiver on your high school team than any other position. And so I think these guys are easily replaceable. And why would you pay $30 million a year for a guy that next year you could draft a guy from one of the top colleges? Heck, Alabama's got 5 of these guys every year, and pay him whatever, $4 million on a rookie contract and get similar production. So the signing to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
All right, so we have 2 games on the slate. We'll have our conversation next week about week 1, but we can go ahead and look at the 2 games we have on deck here. And our usual cast of characters with you on a weekly basis is the AFC West, the NFC West as well. And we do have the opener with the Chiefs and the Ravens. Right now, the Chiefs are laying 3. The over-under is 46.5. Now, my general thoughts on early season football, like the games today, week 1 in the NFL, is that, you tend to see the sloppiness. You tend to see maybe some more unders happen. If it's a really, really hot day, one of the teams could be struggling. And we are calling for 87 degrees in Kansas City on Thursday night. So it's going to be a warm climate there. I want to make a case for a lot of points in week one, as we've talked about here in the last couple of weeks, seeing some elevated over-unders. Oh, I bet you we will now. I had to add myself to the stage. Okay. So crisis averted. We'll go ahead and restart Dave Del Grande. College football. I think in the past, I don't know if you said it's not necessarily your cup of tea, not your expertise. I think just my impression is you like other sports a little bit better than college football, maybe. You can expand on that if you'd like. But here we are. We got a full slate of weekend college football, and now we got a 12-team playoff. Right, so come here real quick. I was in the studios of WBNR Radio, Blacksburg, Virginia, back in 1998, drawing up little 12-team brackets myself. I'm not sure what's taken so long here, 26 years later, but here we are. We finally have a playoff. So your thoughts on that as we enter a new football season?
Well, I think it's a great thing. I think that, for a first weekend of the season, if you don't want to count last weekend, there are some really good matchups this weekend that are attractive. I mean, I'm not the biggest college football fan, but you put LSU and USC playing each other, Texas A&M playing Notre Dame, Clemson playing Georgia. I mean, these in the past, you got to see these matchups once in a while, but now because of the playoff system, it's not like, oh man, and we schedule a game like that and we lose on the first week. The season's over. I mean, we don't have a chance to win a championship anymore. Now that's not the case. Now you could lose. Clemson could lose this game to Georgia and still bounce back. Win its conference and still have a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, 12 teams, basically 5 conferences. You win a conference, you're going to get in. You finish second in one of these major conferences, you're probably going to get in. I just think that I think the end of the season is going to be fun, but to me, equally important is the beginning of the season becomes more fun.
Right, and some very, very good matchups. Which one do you think you're looking forward to the most?
Well, just strictly on a regional basis, the Pac-10, I'm old enough to call it the Pac-8, Pac-12 no longer exists, obviously, but these are my teams. This is where we have a local high school star in Northern California. You aspire to go to USC, UCLA maybe, and more recent years you go to Oregon or Washington. I'm a Cal guy, but I'm not your traditional, I love Cal and I hate Stanford. I hate USC. I hate UCLA. No, I'm a Pac-12 guy. I'll root for the Pac-12, the old Pac-12 teams wherever they play. So for me, I find the USC LSU game the most attractive.
And Dave Del Grande, of course, is a Cal graduate, so maybe we need to get him some ACC gear, right?
Funny because I have an old college buddy who lives in Kentucky, and actually, he grew up in the D.C. area, came to Cal, and then through various jobs, ended up moving to the Cincinnati area, and but we've lost touch. He used to live in Montana. We'd get together and we'd golf and do things during the summertime, but the difference between going to Montana and going all the way out to Cincinnati, probably haven't seen him in 10 or 15 years. But just, the first thing we talked about was, oh my goodness, we got to get together with, a Cal Louisville game or Cal Virginia Tech, as you mentioned. I've never seen a sporting event in most of those sites. I covered a lot of professional sports. So I've been to Charlotte, I've been to D.C. I actually went to watch a Cal game once at Tennessee. But I've never seen, I've never been on the Duke campus, never been on the North Carolina campus, Clemson. So it's even at my advanced age, I look forward to perhaps getting back together with him, going to watch one of those games. Heck, it could be this basketball season.
Blacksburg's a beautiful town too, if that ever comes across your radar. Southwest Virginia, beautiful country out there, as that's where I kind of got my career started. Post school, I guess reality kind of set in for me last night when I was watching the who was on the Big Ten Network. It was the Western Michigan Wisconsin game. Was that right? I guess that was on Fox. No, so it would have been Michigan State and Florida Atlantic, and they were advertising for the games the next day, and they had on Oregon is going to be on the Big Ten Network, and then they're going to have Big Ten After Dark coming live from Washington. It's kind of weird to see that all on TV.
Yeah, in fact, funny you should mention that because when I was talking to my buddy from Kentucky 2 days ago about the Cal's first game, they're here against UC Davis, I mean the team they played a million times, but it's an ACC game, and he gets the ACC network, and he was looking forward to seeing that game that he wouldn't normally be able to see in that part of the country. But no, it's an ESPN Plus game. So already he's disappointed in the schedule. But yeah, no, it's a whole new world.
All right, in the Bay Area, a couple big contracts finally go down. Now, let me ask you this. I almost feel like it's a whole lot to do about nothing with the Brandon Ayuk deal. We'll start with him first. Actually, let's start with Curry first. Then we'll get into the football. How about Curry and that big 1 year, $60+ million contract with him? From your perspective, just go ahead and break that down.
Yeah. But tomorrow somebody else will sign for 63. I mean,
right.
If nothing else in the NFL, this is kind of what we learned, is that what's your hurry to sign a contract, because the more guys who signed before you, the more money you end up making. So let's wait another couple of weeks and you get more than they do. Yeah, the Curry thing to me is more about Curry is, in my experience in sports, about as good a guy as you would ever want to have representing your organization, your hometown, your region, whatever it is. It isn't just about him being a great basketball player. There are a lot of great basketball players, but in Curry's case, it's important, as far as I'm concerned, that the Warriors do something that's going to keep him around 10 years from now, not as a player, but as an ambassador, whatever it is. He might be the general manager of the Valkyries, the new women's professional team in town here, or he could be the next athletic director at Cal, or he's just somebody who's so beloved in this area, and he's not a native Bay Area guy. Hardly anybody. All we knew about him was he was this kid at Davidson who scored a lot of points, before he got drafted by the Warriors. But he's become as loved here as any athlete. I'm not even sure who would be number two. I mean, it's someone like Buster Posey, or somebody like that. And I think the Warriors see that he can be as valuable to the organization after he retires as he is right now. But let's be honest, this Warriors team is not very good all of a sudden. They're going to be scrambling for the last playoff spot, just like they were last year. And that'll be the case, I'm sure, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whenever he retires. So, and when you spend that kind of money, well, what does that mean in the NBA? Well, it just means you're less likely to have money just to be able to afford another free agent. And so giving him that kind of money probably hurts the team in some way. If he took half as much and gave half that money to a second free agent who came in and played with the Warriors, maybe they'd have a better team down the line. I'm not criticizing him for it. But the point is, to me, this does nothing for the Warriors as a contender, as a team, as a a more likable team or whatever. It's all about, hey, look, you're part of our family, and we want you to be a part of our family until you die. And here's our gesture to you.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good one, and I think that hopefully, he sticks around long term.
A token of appreciation.
Yeah.
In a sense. Okay. All right. The Brandon Ayuk deal. They they signed him in, so he's linked in now with the 49ers. I think for 5 years, right? Decent part of the contract guaranteed, not the whole thing. I think 125 million, 130 million, somewhere in that range, if I'm thinking about that correctly off the top of my head. But it seems like if this is what they're going to do, they just could have done this a while ago, or IU could have signed. I mean, is this maybe even a little bit of the case of, I don't care about the preseason. I can hold out. No sense going out there, getting hurt. I can sit this thing out. Sooner or later, we'll get this thing signed, and I'll be in the 49ers uniform. Worst case scenario. It just seems like this could have been done a while ago. They kind of drag it out, and here we go. Contract signed.
Yes, I think that is definitely a part of it. In certainly football, we see this more than in other sports, but we see this in other sports as well. People keep telling us that the preseason, we're cutting back on the number of games, we're limiting the number of times you can hit each other, these kinds of things. We're being told time and again that the preseason, the training camp isn't all that important. And so I think the players are starting to believe that. Well, if it's not important, then why am I even showing up? And I think that was a big part of it here. I mean, to me, this signing in some way is, I don't know. I mean, I spoke about this before. I feel the same way. Now that the college football season is starting this weekend, if you watch college football today or whatever you want to watch a game, a team like Georgia, USC or LSU, and you see the quality of wide receivers that they have on their roster, and you look at it and you say, wow, what's the difference between this guy and Brandon Ayuk? Probably not all that much. Heck, between those three teams, I'm guessing that they've got at least 2, maybe 3 receivers who are at Ayuk's level or better, already. And so these wide receiver has become a glamour position in college football, much like running back was 30 years ago. Now, if you're this great athlete, you're as likely to play wide receiver on your high school team than any other position. And so I think these guys are easily replaceable. And why would you pay $30 million a year for a guy that next year you could draft a guy from one of the top colleges? Heck, Alabama's got 5 of these guys every year, and pay him whatever, $4 million on a rookie contract and get similar production. So the signing to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
All right, so we have 2 games on the slate. We'll have our conversation next week about week 1, but we can go ahead and look at the 2 games we have on deck here. And our usual cast of characters with you on a weekly basis is the AFC West, the NFC West as well. And we do have the opener with the Chiefs and the Ravens. Right now, the Chiefs are laying 3. The over-under is 46.5. Now, my general thoughts on early season football, like the games today, week 1 in the NFL, is that, you tend to see the sloppiness. You tend to see maybe some more unders happen. If it's a really, really hot day, one of the teams could be struggling. And we are calling for 87 degrees in Kansas City on Thursday night. So it's going to be a warm climate there. I want to make a case for a lot of points in week 1, as we've talked about here in the last couple of weeks, seeing some elevated over-unders. But I'm not going to apply this first game into that category. We'll get to the rest of the week one slate, obviously, next week when we can find our fun games, etc. But if I were going to put a tag of a fun game on any particular matchup, it's not going to be this one. I don't think, with the Ravens and the Chiefs. And when we last saw these two in the playoffs, John Harbaugh was getting crucified for putting the ball in the air way too much. The Ravens coming into this season, definitely with some offensive line questions. We believe the Chiefs to have a pretty decent defense until they prove that otherwise. I'm going to go with that narration for them. But they have some things to kind of work out on offense too. They have some new receivers. They have some dinged up receivers. Is Kelsey really getting a step slower as he gets older? All this will be determined on the football field this season. But if we're going to look for fireworks, I'm not going to look for them in this Ravens-Chiefs game. I mean, I really could see something like 21-13, Kansas City, somewhere in that neighborhood. I do expect the Chiefs to win it. Tough road spot, as the banners will be hoisted for Kansas City, and Lamar Jackson and company is going to have to watch that happen in front of their eyes. But I think a tough spot for Baltimore overall. I'll take the Chiefs in a lower scoring game. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it's a great matchup. I mean, to me, in some ways, it reminds me of a Super Bowl in the sense that, everybody's going to want to be watching this game. Everybody's excited about it, like a Super Bowl. And what does that mean from a bettor's perspective? They're going to take the over, and so immediately the price on the over is going to be a couple of points, 3 points higher than it would be for a normal game. And so that right there would tell you, well, the smart play is probably on the under. Then, secondly, you've got teams who, teams aren't playing this week. And heck, the coaching staffs of these teams have probably been looking forward to this game all summer. They've had 2 weeks to prepare, or more likely 2 months to prepare.
Right.
You would think that there'd be great game plans to deal with each other. And again, what does that tell you? Well, that probably tells you that there are going to be fewer points than you think. So everything peripherally says to me, this should, like you said, probably be a lower scoring game than people realize. But that said, I think both of these teams have something to prove offensively. Kansas City did not have a good year offensively last year, and they went out and they basically attempted to acquire a track team of wide receivers. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out this year. Baltimore, on the other side, started to put together a nice passing attack with Jackson, and now they've brought in an elite running back, to complement Jackson's running ability. You would think that both teams will be better offensively this year than they were last year, and so that kind of contradicts, my first thoughts on the game. So what's going to trump them all is this. I think that, we talked a lot about the kickoff going into the preseason. This is going to be exciting. It's a whole new thing. Man, I can't wait to see it. It was a complete dud in the preseason because nobody tipped their hand at all. Well, this is showcase time. You've got two teams here with incredible athleticism, return guys, the teams, excuse me, that are as likely as any teams in the NFL to take advantage of this rule, especially Baltimore, which is always a good special teams team because Harbaugh, puts more emphasis on it than most coaches. I think we're going to see some fireworks in special teams in this game. It would not shock me that if there were the first kickoff touchdown of the season comes out of this game. And in the end, that could be what tips the scale one way or the other, that extra touchdown, that extra 60-yard run that sets up good field position that you don't normally account for when you think about, it's going to be a high-scoring game or a low-scoring game. I think the kickoffs could lead to an extra 10 points in this game. And given that 10-point boost, well, I'm not on the under here. I'm going to side with. I'll get caught up in the excitement. I'll lay those extra 3 points or whatever it is, and look for a high-scoring game. I mean, if I'm going to play one thing in this game, and I'm sure there's other fun things to play, but I take kickoff touchdown. Give me a kickoff touchdown at a nice number, and I wonder, if those numbers for week one of the season, have been adjusted from what they were last year, because man, they really should be. I mean, the chances for a kickoff return for a touchdown in any given game on opening week this year has to be 10 times more likely than it was last year when they kicked the ball through the end zone every time. But how was the line adjusted there? I got to believe they're going to be slow to adjust that line until Baltimore returns a kickoff for a touchdown in this game, and they realize, oh man, we just gave money away at 11-1 on a kickoff return. We're going to start making it 5-1 moving forward. So I think, to me, kind of a weird point of view, of course, but you get that from me sometimes. I take a shot with that.
You know what? Looking through, you would think that they would have, just because of the kickoff being kind of a new thing as it is, you would think that they would have some kind of dedicated line for it, or offer it at least in the scoring packages. But man, no, I don't see any kind of sort of a kickoff return for a touchdown. Now, anytime touchdown scores, let's just see if we have like the special teams or something like that. We have defense. No special teams either. So maybe what we need to do is get a little more research done on who's exactly going to be the returner and try to file him in as a anytime touchdown score.
Well, you know this better than I do. But first off, these people who put out these lines are smart. If they perceive there will be action on something, they give you a line on it. And so it may not be there today, but I gotta believe as we get closer to kickoff, it's going to pop up somewhere. So keep your eyes and ears open.
I'll have to talk to my VIP representative and have her get on this. Maybe she can get it. What? It actually kind of a flashback in my mind as well. Not only did we lack kickoff touchdowns here in recent years, last year I don't even think we really had much as far as a punt return for a touchdown. I just don't really remember too many standout plays. I think the one standout play was the Rams and the Ravens game that ended in overtime with a punt return, I believe, for the touchdown. But besides that, there's not a lot of runbacks on either the kick or the punt in recent years.
Well, it's funny what you remember and what you don't remember, and I agree with you that I couldn't identify any one of them except when it affects your fantasy team.
Right.
And if you remember opening night last year, the game where Rodgers got injured, if I'm not mistaken, the Jets won that game on a punt return.
Right.
Didn't that game on a walk-off punt return?
Yeah.
Because and how do I remember that? Is because in a tight fantasy battle in week one, I had the Jets defense. The other guy had Buffalo's defense, coincidentally. And without Rodgers in there, and who was my quarterback, mind you, it's like, oh man, I get doubly screwed here, because not only do I not get Rodgers points, but now the Jets offense isn't going to do anything against Buffalo's defense. And now I've got no chance. And I'm losing the matchup until they return the punt for a touchdown on the last play. And I thought, somebody shining over my season this year. It's going to be a magical year for my fantasy team, and in fact, it was. But that's the one punt return I can remember for a touchdown last year.
All right, let's go through some of the game props for this one. Let's see if we can find something that tickles your fancy here. And over under passing yards, I got Mahomes at 258.5. I got Lamar Jackson just at 217.5. Are those stayaways? Do you see something there maybe you like?
Well, like I said, I think that there are an incredible number of athletes, obviously on both sides of the ball in this game, but especially in the passing game, with Kansas City having upgraded in that area. Baltimore's always got some athletes there. They've never really been able to take advantage of them, but they, as you indicated, they've tried to go overboard last year, maybe a little bit with Jackson throwing the ball and improved receivers and what have you. And I think they like to believe they're moving in that direction. I think that when push comes to shove, we're looking at two elite AFC teams, and that usually means it isn't going to be easy to run the ball. And if it's not easy to run the ball, I know two teams that really want to put on a passing show in this game, and I think they're going to take a shot at it. And so I'd take both of those numbers over and expect at least one of them to hit. Because, kind of like the kickoff, Baltimore's passing game is a 60-yard touchdown pass waiting to happen basically on every play. They're not this dink and dunk, Detroit Lions. Let's throw the ball 8 yards. Let's throw it 5 yards. Let's move the chain. 6 minutes later, you kick a field goal. Now, they're one of these teams where let's throw it to a guy in open space and let him run and get a long touchdown. And now Kansas City is attempting to become that team again, like they were in the Tyreek Hill era. So I think that, how are we going to get to 250-something, 217, whatever you said? Well, it sure helps when you get a couple of 60-yarders mixed in there. And I think this game, to me, appears to have that kind of potential.
You get 2-1 on Lamar Jackson for 250 yards or more.
Well, like I said, I'd be looking at, picking certain guys, or even if it's available for Jackson, for longest touchdown pass. In other words, will he have a pass longer than 45 yards, kind of thing. Rather than, because I don't see him throwing for 300 yards in this game. I don't necessarily see Mahomes throwing for 350. So yeah, you can bump them up and maybe get a 2-1 odds. 2-1 odds don't catch my eye. I'd rather go for the longer shot. I think that where you're going to find that maybe that becomes available is in finding, trying to identify, and this is going to be very difficult, the receiver that's most likely to catch that long pass, and someone who like Worthy, who his over under on yards for the game is 27. And now, I think he's gonna be the guy most likely to catch this 80-yarder. What if I bump him up to 100 yards? Wow, well, bump him up to 100 yards, you get 20-1. That's the kind of thing that I throw my darts at.
Worthy for 100 yards is plus 630.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I just threw his name out there,
right?
For no apparent reason, because Kansas City now has got 2 or 3 guys.
They can hit the home run.
Right, and Baltimore's always got these guys, and both teams have a good running game, especially now Baltimore with Henry. That you have to respect their running game. They'll try to run the ball, and so it's not like, let's just play 6 defensive backs at all times and prevent the big play. You can't play that way against either one of these teams. And that just increases the chances that one of these track stars is going to catch a short pass, and there he goes, 75 yards later. And, oh, man, he's one of the guys that I threw the dart at, and it hit his number. And so, wow, okay, I just cashed me a nice ticket.
If you do Worthy for 100 yards and make his counterpart in Zay Flowers, you would think you'd be the one maybe to get for 100 yards. for the Ravens, or the best player with the best chance, you would think anyway. So Flowers for 100 yards and Worthy for 100 yards, those two guys together, almost 34-1.
Oh man, I can see the glow coming off
Right.
your head. But 34-1. Ooh, when does the season start? Oh man, I've waited all year for this.
Yeah,
So,
all kinds of light bulbs are lighting up in the head that we have not had lit up in quite some time here. So we're gonna have
there
to
you go.
shake the rust off on some of this, to be honest.
But I think this, it's always fun to talk about these kinds of pinball type things. But let's be honest, there's only certain matchups where you can look at and say, this game's got that, pinball potential. And because of what, the types of players that these two teams have recruited into their passing game, that's, fairly unique. I think maybe you could find maybe two other teams in the NFL where you would say, their track team could beat our track team. And if you throw a track team out there, it's like I said, it's not going to help you move the chains necessarily, but it'll put points on the board every once in a while, and that's what we're talking about.
All right. Who might have the best chance to score twice in this game? You got a Worthy at 12-1. You got Lamar Jackson 17-1. Let's see, Zay Flowers 17-1. Derrick Henry's 5-1. Pacheco plus 650. Kelsey plus 650.
And therein lies the problem.
Right.
Every one of those guys has that kind of potential. You didn't even mention Andrews, who's Baltimore
13-1, right? Yep.
Right, throws the ball to him at the goal line. I think that would be very difficult to figure out. You would think on opening night that they would attempt to put something new on display. I think that Baltimore would like nothing better than to show the world that we've got this monster running back now, and good luck dealing with us. And maybe try to force Henry into the end zone a couple of times, where when we get to week 3, that ball's going to be faked to Henry, and Jackson's going to run it around the end like he does so many times during the season. But I think in week one, that given the opportunity, I think they're going to try to showcase him at the goal line. Similarly, I think on the other side of the ball, you would think Kansas City, what are they trying to, show in this game? Well, they're trying to show that they've reincarnated the Tyreek Hill days with this all the speed they have on the outside now, and they're going to throw the ball deep to somebody or get this new weapon involved. That's harder for that guy to score 2 touchdowns. I can see where it would be harder for me to project a guy for Kansas City's 2 touchdowns, but for me, Baltimore is pretty easy. That going into the game, you can have a real good idea that in the back of Harbaugh's mind, he's thinking, let's get Henry in the end zone. Let's welcome him with a couple of touchdowns. He'll be happy, and the whole world will look at us a little bit differently than they did last year. So he'd be my guy for the 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you know what? I like that theory. That's pretty good. Thinking through the process there. I like that. All right, let's go to the next game. Green Bay is a fun team. They'll travel down to Brazil, Sao Paulo. They'll take the Philadelphia Eagles alongside with them. A great first matchup on Friday football. Obviously back in the day, high school football reigned king on Friday nights. College and the NFL were to step out of the way of that. But college has trickled into that time slot, and now with the money involved, the NFL, why not us as well? So Friday nights for the high school dedicated for them. That's a thing of the past for the most part. But a fun game. It's going to be on Peacock, Green Bay and Philadelphia. Let's see. The over-under in this one is 48.5. Right now, the Eagles are laying 2.5 points, minus 120. So that's heavily juiced. We'll see if that clicks up to 3 by game time. It's an 8:20 p.m. Eastern Standard game. 64 degrees and cloudy. Wondering about the Brazil weather, so I looked it up. But, 90 degrees the day before, so quite the cool down for this NFL game. You wonder about the stadium and the grass. Will that affect things until you really kind of see these guys warming up? I mean, I think that's going to be a question mark, the exact playing condition of that field. But the NFL's probably been down there for a month trying to get it situated, looking good for this international spotlight. Packers and the Eagles. I mean, my first thoughts are this game would be something that flies over through the roof. But again, back to the week one kind of clunkiness, turnover here and there, deep in the territory. Next thing you know, the over that you think is a lock is dead in the water when it's 10-6 at halftime. Anyway, this has the potential to be a fun game on paper. We hope that it is for a Friday night. Man, but I could see the under coming in on this one too. I mean, I really, really could. But what are your thoughts about this one right out of the gate?
Well, I think they got the wrong team favored. First off, what can we expect from the Eagles this year? I think that's a big, big question mark. Certainly, last year was a major disappointment, and that I can't forget how bad they were in the second half of the season last year, and for no apparent reason. It wasn't like, well, of course, Hurts got injured, and then they went in the tank. No. Hurts was fine. Brown was fine. Smith was fine. It wasn't injuries that caused Philadelphia to go in the tank. They just went in the tank, and I don't know exactly why. And I just remember coming down to the end of that season last year when they were doing so poorly, and yet you looked at their remaining schedule, and if I'm not mistaken, their last 3 games were 2 against the Giants and 1 against the Redskins. The Commanders. And it's like, well, no matter how bad they're playing, they're going to win these games and still make the playoffs. And then they went in and lost all 3 of them, or 2 out of 3 or something. And it was like, oh my God, I didn't realize this team isn't just in a slump. This team has hit rock bottom. And what has changed? They lost their catalyst, their starting center. The key to their offensive line, the key to their push. He's not there anymore. And I think that's a huge loss for them. I think this season starts off on a very negative note. And I don't know that we can consider Philadelphia, a sure thing playoff team this year. Certainly not a title contender. Now, we watched them on opening night. They put on a big show. Well, of course, then throw all that out the window. I don't think we're going to see that on opening night. I think Green Bay, an up-and-coming team, kind of a sleeper team to win their division, even though there's a real good team atop that division. I think Green Bay should go into this game as the team you would expect to win, and there's no reason for them not to be firing on all cylinders. Their passing game as the season went along last year, they were the exact opposite of the Eagles. They were a team that by the end of the year, oh my God, how do you stop all these weapons? And the quarterback, has become a real good quarterback, and yet they're all still young pieces. You would expect Green Bay going into this game, to be the team, the young team that makes the statement that we're here. And I think if Philadelphia makes a statement in this game, it's much more likely to be, we're not here anymore. And so I'm surprised Green Bay's not favored in this game. I think they could win this game real easily.
I like it. Let's see here. If we go alternate spread wise on this, then The Green Bay to win by 10 points is plus 470.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would not be shocked if, again, if you think back at the end of last season, even the playoff game Philadelphia played against Tampa Bay, it was like,
brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, man, it's like, man, these guys are lucky. They're playing terrible, but yet they're going to get in the playoffs because the end of the season schedule is so soft. Then they completely blow up on that, and still they land the playoff game. Geez, this is their year. There's one playoff team they could possibly beat. It's Tampa Bay, and they get matched up with Tampa Bay in the playoffs. Oh man, they're going to win this game, and that game wasn't even competitive. And so it's I'm not going to be surprised if that team shows up again. If things start going south on that team in this first game, that things don't blow up on them almost immediately, where they make a couple of mistakes late in this game that turns a 1 touchdown game into a 2 or a 3 touchdown game. So, I think it's as likely that Green Bay wins this game handily as it is that Green Bay wins this game by a field goal.
This is great content for our viewers and listeners out there, because honestly, if you listen to sports radio and some of the gambling stuff, and even just in general, the ESPNs of the world, First Take, whatever it is, there's a lot of love for the Eagles. There really, really is. I mean, there is not spread thin at all. They're a very, very popular team. I think everyone just assumes it's going to be a layup for them. And here we are, Mr. Dave Del Grande saying, "No, not so fast, everybody, not so fast."
Well, let's not underestimate the fact that they brought in Barkley and to kind of change their dynamic a little. But I'm not sure that that's the kind of guy they needed. I mean, the one thing Philadelphia did well last year was they punched the ball into the end zone from the red zone almost automatically. They got down by the goal line. They did their tush-push thing. Hurts scored 15 touchdowns last year. I mean, the last thing this team needed was, well, let's bring in this dynamic running back who can help us push the ball across the goal line down by the goal line. No. We don't need that. Of all things, we don't need that because our quarterback serves as that guy. What we'd rather have is somebody like, just to throw a name out there, Jahmyr Gibbs, somebody that we throw the ball to out in the flat, and he gives us another weapon, another exciting weapon on the outside that now you've got to cover him. It opens up things in the middle, for Hurts to run the ball more, take some of the pressure off the passing game. I mean, if they had brought in that kind of guy, I'd be far more excited about their prospects because this team revolves around their offense. And if things aren't going well offensively, we saw this last year, A.J. Brown starts complaining to the coach. He's arguing with Hurts. Hurts doesn't like the coach. I mean, it's all, and like I said, it's very possible in my mind that the whole reason that this thing just didn't completely blow up last year is the fact that you have one of the league's best offensive linemen, the captain, the guy who's been around, a respected guy, right in the middle of it, telling everybody to shut up and just play football. We've got a really good team. And that guy's not there anymore. And so now when things start going bad, the guy who's telling everybody to shut up and back off, go back to your corner, he's not there. So the fights continue. And now you're swinging. Now you're not just talking. Now you're swinging. And it's just powder keg. I mean, in my mind, I just don't see it.
A.J. Dillon out for the season. Your guy, Josh Jacobs, comes over from the Raiders. Obviously, Aaron Jones gone as well. He goes to the Vikings. But Josh Jacobs, now the premier back, without Dillon back there, his fantasy stock should rise correctly. But what kind of impact Mike Jacobs, you know him well from the Raider days, but is this a pure upgrade from what they had before?
I don't know that it's an upgrade at all in terms of total production. I mean, one thing Green Bay's done well over the years is split time between good backs. I thought Dillon was a great compliment for Jones. Jones gets injured a lot, no problem. We've got arguably the best backup running back in the league that we'll just plug in there. But at the same time, he was a different type of back, so they could coexist when both were healthy. When all said and done, I'm not sure Green Bay will have more rushing yards. In fact, with Dillon out, I would guess they'd have fewer rushing total yards than they had last year. But Jacobs, if nothing else, thank God they've got Jacobs now and not Jones, because when you got Jones, you need Dillon there as an insurance policy. And if Dillon weren't there, you would get a couple of really good games out of Jones until he got hurt, and then bang, you got nothing. Jacobs isn't a guy who gets hurt. I mean, he's as durable. I don't know what total carries last year. He had to rank right in the top 3 in the league. And even though he wasn't on a real good team that ran the ball, all the time, weren't protecting leads. I mean, the Raiders were behind more times than not. I think that you're right from a fantasy perspective that he will, he's good. What you want in fantasy is quantity. You want keep handing them the ball 2, 3, 4 yards at a time. Get down to the goal line. What are they going to do? They hand the ball to Jacobs, of course. They have no other option. He's going to get touchdowns. He's going to get 20-plus carries a game, and he's going to be durable to the point where he's probably going to play the full season for you. I think he's a great pick in fantasy. But like I said, in terms of is he better than Jones when Jones is healthy? Probably not. Is he better than the combination of Jones and were in the past? Definitely. And so, like I said, great call by them to bring him in. It's almost like they anticipated that Dillon was going to get hurt. And so, I think he will have a good year numbers-wise, but I think Green Bay is less of a running team this year with him than they were last year with those other two guys. And that's fine because Green Bay doesn't need to run the ball. They have trouble enough spreading the ball around to all their great receivers. And so it just means more passes, more balls to the outside receivers, and probably makes them a higher scoring team when all is said and done.
I like the Dontavian Wicks plus 360 for a touchdown. Christian Watson's right there at plus 190. Jaden Reed's at plus 200. Dobbs is plus 230. The baseline yardage for Jordan Love is 256 and a half. I would assume that sounds low to you, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like I said, this is similar to the first game we talked about in the sense that these are two really good teams, or supposed to be really good teams anyway. They're not just going to go out there and one team's going to get a lead and they're going to turn conservative because they can run the ball all day long against an outmatched opponent. Now, these are two teams that should, physically should be similar to each other. You're not going to be able to run the ball real effectively against each other. I think you're going to have to throw the ball. I mean, Green Bay basically has no choice, but because this is what they do best. Philadelphia would like to mix it up this year, probably a little bit more. But yeah, Green Bay, they got to come out throwing, and like you mentioned, I mean, the guys you mentioned 4 guys there who are all, man, I can see this guy getting a touchdown. Yeah, they throw to him a lot at the goal line. Man, he gets a lot of, whatever it is. I could see, again, you want to play conservatively. I'll take all 4 of those guys to score a touchdown for an equal amount. and two of them will hit, and you'll make a little bit of money. Even if one of them hits, if it's the right guy, you make a little bit of money. So it's a nice return on your investment if that's what you're into. But I just think that Green Bay this year and Houston have to be 1-2 in the league in terms of passing yards. And how can they not be with all the weapons they have and the quarterback they have? So, yes, that number does seem a little low to me.
Jaden Reed for 50 yards receiving, Dobbs for 50 yards receiving, Christian Watson for 50 yards receiving. All three of those players for 50 yards, which doesn't sound like much, but it kind of is. 40 is a little bit easier number to achieve. But you get almost 15-1. Could you see all three of these guys getting 50 yards?
Well, that's asking a lot. Yes, I can see each one of them individually getting 50 yards, but can it all happen on the same day? You would hope not. I mean, you would hope that Green Bay goes into this game, excuse me, and has identified, all right, look, this is where Philly's defense is most vulnerable. We're going to get them with our slot receiver, or we're going to, our wideout's going to get the single coverage, or, we're going to throw more to the tight end against them. I mean, being able to identify something where, this is going to be the guy that catches 8 passes today, and next week when we play somebody else, it's going to be this other guy who catches the 7 passes, and the week after that it's going to be somebody else who catches 6 passes. I don't know. I have an easier time seeing one guy having a big game. Again, it's hard to predict who that guy is going to be without really knowing what the game plan is. They're all going to get 50. That just doesn't happen that often.
All right, season-long bets. Let's go to the receivers. I'm going to look in the category of, again, this one sounds like it's an easy one, but it's not. 6+ regular season receiving touchdowns. So players to get 6 touchdowns. We can parlay up to 7 together. So we can come up with some interesting tickets here. Obviously, the one thing that's going to screw you on this is injuries. So if you get someone who's going to be out for an extended amount of time, you're basically dead in the water. I think 5 of my 6 players hit their 6 touchdowns last year. The one player who did not was my flyer on Odell Beckham Jr. With the Ravens, and he was out for a decent part of the season, never had a shot. So let's see if we can kind of conjure up something here. I'm just going to go ahead and start with the underdogs on touchdown reception, or as far as 6 touchdowns scored for these underdog players. And I got a couple interesting ones right off the bat. The longest shot on my board right now is Freiermuth, and I know we're down on the Steelers, especially their passing. But if there is going to be one benefactor to Pickens getting double covered, maybe it is Freiermuth. We know that Russell Wilson will be the starter, but if we ever get the other quarterback in there, he does like the tight end. How about Freiermuth? Throw him on this list, or let's leave him off. Plus 550 for 6 touchdowns.
Well, that's a very good assessment of the Pittsburgh situation, and you just know how desperate they were to add another weapon on the outside. With their recruitment of Ayuk, they'd be a completely different team if they had him. But without him, they don't have Deontay Johnson anymore. And you're right. I mean, why would anybody not double team Pickens at all times? I like Freiermuth. I think he's a guy that is kind of a sneaky guy that they use a lot at the goal line, gets down the field, can get you some depth even when 30 yards out, you throw the ball down the middle to him for a touchdown. I can see him potentially leading Pittsburgh in receiving touchdowns. So I think that's a good one.
All right, we'll throw Fryermuth on the list. This next player, I'm going to leave him off just because there's so many questions. But Jahan Dotson plus 480. Yeah, no Dotson for me. You don't see that. That doesn't wet your whistle, does it?
No, but you hit on something that I think is going to be important in this assessment here, and that is teams that have a dominant wide receiver,
right,
and teams that are not very good. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot, and so what comes to mind? Well, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but you think of the Commanders, right? They're a team that now they've got a better quarterback, but their receivers. I mean, McLaurin to me is far and away their best receiver, and so Daniels is going to get, unless he gets injured, like you said, you got to pencil him in for 30 touchdowns at least this year, passing the ball. And where are they going to go? Well, man, if McLaurin doesn't catch 10 of those 30, I don't know who is. I mean, he doesn't have that many other great options. I would look at a guy like that. I even mentioned Deontay Johnson a minute ago. Same thing.
Sorry, neighbor came in. I'm getting a little distracted.
Same thing with Deontay Johnson in Carolina. He's going to be the top receiver there. This is a bad team, arguably the worst team in the league. They've got a young quarterback who you would hope he'd be better this year. You got to believe he's going to throw at least 25 touchdown passes. Every quarterback does if he stays healthy. Maybe more like 30 because they're going to be behind in every game. Well, who's he going to throw them to? Well, if he throws 30 touchdown passes, again, Deontay Johnson is going to get at least 8 of them, maybe 10 of them, because he's going to be the dominant throw-to guy at the goal line. If you watch the Colorado game on TV the other night against North Dakota State, you throw the ball to your star down by the goal line. You find a way to find him. He's the guy you throw the fade to, even when he's not open. You're not even looking at anybody else. Well, I got to throw it to him. He's most likely to catch it. That gets you a cheap touchdown here or there. 6 touchdowns is not all that much. And so, it's guys like that, like McLaurin, like Deontay Johnson, who I would think, are a far better, risk, to get 6 touchdowns than, say, take a team like Green Bay that we've talked about. Well, their guy's going to throw 50 touchdown passes. Well, yeah, but he's going to spread them around among, 10 guys. Which is going to be the guy that catches 7 and which is going to be the guy that catches 5. It's hard to distinguish. Well, some of these teams it's not hard to distinguish. I'd much rather go with a guy who I know is going to be the target down there rather than one of 5 targets the team has.
All right, so Deontay Johnson is plus 270. We'll throw him on this list. McLaurin is at plus 150. So we'll throw him on the list. And just those 3 guys alone right now is paying 59-1. So not too shabby just for those 3. Let's see if we can find a couple more. The running back's an interesting one always for receiving touchdowns. We've got a couple here with good paying odds. And we expect a good year from Breece Hall. But is that tricky with the running backs, getting them involved in this kind of prop?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that what you need for a running back like this, in my mind, is a guy who's going to give you 2 long-distance touchdowns. Right. In other words, a guy like McKinnon that Kansas City has had over the years. Guy you could swing the ball out to, and he breaks a tackle, and he's gone. You got to get a couple of cheap ones like that because McCaffrey catches a lot of, short touchdown passes, and they throw the ball to them a lot in those situations. But this is a team that has so many other weapons that McCaffrey can get open in those situations. When the Jets get down by the goal line, what are they going to do? They don't really have, a tight end to throw the ball to. You got Wilson down there. He's not really the type of, he's the tall target or whatever you would want, for the end zone. They don't have a lot of passing options down there, so they would end up running the ball in more often, or Rodgers would end up throwing the ball to some third string tight end or whatever, like he's done so well over the past. So I think that, to me, I'd much rather go with a wideout, even a tight end, where he's going to be a big part of the passing game down by the goal line. I just don't see, as many catches as Hall's going to get. I'm going to, if he catches 100 balls this year, I'm going to guess that 85 of them are between the 20s. And, down by the goal line, I just don't see the quality and quantity being there, for a guy like that.
All right, so good rule, I think. Let's just leave the run, as tempting as the running backs are at times with like a Bijan Robinson. Let's just go ahead and potentially leave them off the list here. All right. How about we talked about the Packers? They're going to spread it around. That's tough. I got Wicks at 210. We'll leave him off. This one's interesting to me too, because Buffalo needs to make up over 300 missing targets from last season. You got to figure the rookie Keon Coleman's going to be a part of that for sure. They're still going to score some points, Buffalo. Generally, people are down on them overall. I think you're down on them a little bit as well. But Keon Coleman at plus 190 for 6 touchdowns, I got to figure he's got to get 6, right?
I don't know that much about him. And, just because a guy is electric in the field and he's got great speed and what have you, the guys who catch a lot of touchdown passes are guys who know, veteran-type guys who know how to get open in the end zone. I think of a guy like St. Brown, who you think of St. Brown and you think, well, gee, he's not going to get you any of these 70-yard touchdowns. No, but you know what? He's the guy the quarterback's going to trust the most on 3rd and 6 at the 6-yard line. He's going to find a way to get open in, between linebackers, one step over the goal line and get in there. And I think that Buffalo, to me, Buffalo's most likely target at the goal line is going to be their tight end. I mean, you talk about them losing all these receptions from last year. They lost their top 2 wideouts, whatever. They've got their tight ends back. And Kincaid is someone who has really came on last year, had a really nice season. And to me, he is easily identifiable as a guy that they're going to throw to a lot at the goal line. Diggs is one of these guys, veteran guys like I'm talking about, finds a way to get open in the end zone. You're replacing him with a rookie who maybe doesn't have, that kind of knowledge, that kind of size, to get open down there. I think you're going to see a lot more balls going to the tight end overall this year with Buffalo, but certainly when they get down by the goal line. They're also a team that, while the quarterback runs for a lot of touchdowns, they don't get a lot of touchdowns running from their running backs. They don't have the big bruiser back that's going to, steal touchdowns down there. I think they're more likely down there to play fake. Allen rolls around the end. He runs it in when he can, or there's the tight end, sneaking out into the flat. He's throwing it to him. Kincaid's going to score 6 touchdowns this year. You can put that in the you can put that in the book right now.
All right, we'll put him on the ticket. He's minus 115. So right now, if we take Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, and Dalton Kincaid, we are getting paid a $10 bill anyway, went to $1,114. All right, we're getting juicy. I like it. Let's see if we can find a couple more in here. as we go through this list. I think you'll like this one because you've hyped him up pretty well so far, and you like Jacksonville this year as well. Brian Thomas Jr. plus 150.
No. I mean, I do like Brian Thomas. I do think that he's, if there were a number where number of touchdown passes of 40 or more yards or 50 or more yards, I think that he, in my mind, would rank among the favorites. I think he's going to be a great long distance target for Lawrence. But I don't see him as a guy who's going to catch a ton of passes. I don't necessarily, again, these young guys that I've never seen I'm not a big college football fan. I couldn't tell you all that much about Coleman in college or Thomas or whatever. So I don't really have a picture of how they're going to play in the NFL. I just know that, Thomas's case, he's considered this great deep threat. Deep threats are not, they're not going to score a lot of touchdowns. They're going to get glamorous ones, but when you're inside the 10-yard line, is he even on the field? And so there's too much uncertainty there for me.
Evan Ingram, leave him off or put him on?
I mean, Ingram, if you ask me, and when all's said and done, who's going to have more touchdowns, Ingram or Thomas, I would say Ingram. But again, I don't know. There's just something about Lawrence that I have less confidence in him, down by the goal line than I do a veteran quarterback. Let's say like a Rodgers. Rodgers down by the goal line, he's going to find somebody, open. He knows exactly where he needs to throw the ball, and it doesn't matter whether it's his best receiver or some tackle eligible. He knows where the guy's going to be, where he needs to throw it, and how he's going to get it into the end zone. Lawrence has never been that type of quarterback. Hopefully he develops into it. Maybe it's because his receivers just haven't been that great. But I'm not as confident in Lawrence being able to, push the ball in by throwing the ball down by the goal line. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, half of these touchdowns that we're talking about are going to have to come from inside the 10-yard line. And if you're the speediest guy out there, well, there's no room for speed at the 10-yard line. Like I said, you might not even be on the field anymore. And in the case of the tight ends, there are guys like Kelsey, Andrews, these kinds of guys who have a history. They know how to get open. The quarterback knows they're going to get open. They're looking for them all the time. I'm not sure that Lawrence and Ingram have that kind of chemistry.
Do any of the Seattle receivers interest you to put on this list? You're getting decent underdog prices on Smith and Jigba. You're getting a good price on Lockett. Metcalf is one of the favorites up here.
Well, and rightfully so with Metcalf. Right. I mean, the lines there all make sense. Is that I've kind of discussed this. The different types of receivers you have. You have, Smith Najee, a deep threat, a guy that, a classic third receiver, runs a lot of deep patterns, will catch more deep touchdown passes than either of the other two guys, but won't be a factor down by the goal line. You have Lockett, who's a smart, kind of like Godwin, guy, Cup, guys like that who know how to get open around the goal line, have the potential to give you those extra touchdowns. Might be a nice play at a price, but then you've got the biggest reason why I wouldn't take either of those first two guys is Metcalf is a monster. I mean, Metcalf is one of those guys where, kind of like Evans, Tampa Bay has done over the years, you just know that there's they're going to lob at least one pass every game to Metcalf or to Evans at the goal line. It's just it's like a prerequisite for these teams that, that guys, we're going to do this. We have to do this at least once every game. And if we don't, I'll look like the dumbest coach in the league because we got this tremendous weapon. You just throw the ball up there. He jumps up. He wrestles it down. We get another touchdown. It's how Evans scores all his touchdowns every year, and it's how Metcalf scores 2/3 of his touchdowns every year. And when as I mentioned before, who's the quarterback going to be looking for down by the goal line? Well, there's just that trust factor that if you got Metcalf or you got Evans, they don't have to be open. You're going to throw it up there, and he's going to come down with it, at least every other week, sometimes twice in a game. I just think I can't imagine that Evans or Metcalf is going to score fewer than 6 touchdowns. That said, as you indicated, you didn't give a number, but it's like, do you really want to lay $1.50 on this, or whatever his line's going to be? Because he got to be, is he going to score 6 touchdowns? Man, if you put a price on that at even money, you have people running to the window to say yes. So, what line do you put on Evans and on Metcalf?
So we have Metcalf is at minus 230.
Well, yeah, there you go. Okay.
But I'll say this. So I mentioned these 4 guys, and again, Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, McLaurin, and Kincaid are paying at 111 to 1. The minus 230 kind of disappears in your mind when you add them in, because now that 111 to 1 is now 160 to 1. So that's worth just sticking them in there for that account.
Yeah, you're right.
And then if you do the same thing with St. Brown, like you said, now we're at over 200 to 1 odds. So throw St. Brown and Metcalf in there.
What's he like? Minus 220?
Minus 370 for St. Brown.
370. Wow. I think he's far less likely to get the touchdown than Metcalf or Evans are. But yeah.
Mike Evans is minus 390.
Yeah. And again, I know we're not in business here to tell people that, hey, take the 4-to-1 shot.
Well, I think it applies on this ticket because, now we're getting a 200 to 1 ticket still with Evans and Metcalf and those other 4 guys.
Yeah, well, in of those 3 guys, I think Evans, the odds reflect it. I think Evans is the surer thing. I think Metcalf is the second surer thing. I think I'd be less likely to put St. Brown in there, even though I think he's going to do it, just because I'm not crazy about the price. And they've got a lot of other. They won't lob the ball to St. Brown in the end zone. He's going to have to get open. They're as likely to throw it, to Laporta now, or throw the ball to the flat to Gibbs. Plus, they're a team that loves to run the ball in. Montgomery scores as many touchdowns running the ball as anybody else in the league. So you've got a lot more competition there than you have in Tampa or that you have in Seattle. And so I would favor those 2 guys ahead of St. Brown.
All right, so we'll stick Evans and Metcalf in there. We have room for one more on this greedy ticket. We should just stop now. But how about Jake Ferguson? Since we like the tight end.
Well, for the life of me, I've been, call me what would the term be? No lifer. But I've been doing, a handful of mock drafts, and for my upcoming draft this week, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked by the lack of respect Ferguson gets. Somebody's got to like him. Somebody's got to see in him what I see, and I'm sure some others do, but not the people who I've been, mock drafting against. At the end of last season, I thought he's like, what the heck? Where'd this guy come from? This is an incredible weapon that Dallas now puts on the field alongside Lamb, and he's catching touchdowns right and left at the end of the year last year. And why is this year going to be any different? And it was a big year for the quarterback. I don't think the quarterback's going in a negative direction at all. If anything, they have less of a running game than they've ever had. I think they might throw the ball more than ever. I think Ferguson is a really strong fantasy play. I mean, as good of bargain as there is in the fantasy draft down where you're being selected in like the 8th round, the 9th or 10th tight end taken. I think he could rank right up there with the top tight ends this year in terms of total production. So that said, I mean, I don't really see any difference between him and Kelsey or like Laporta. And I guarantee you on the list you're looking at there's a huge difference between Ferguson.
Right. Yeah. There is.
He's one of these guys who catches touchdowns. Dallas doesn't have a Metcalf. Dallas doesn't have the Tampa guy. I mean, they don't get down by the goal line and lob the ball to their 6'5" wideout. They don't have that guy. I mean, Lamb is probably not even 6 foot tall. But Ferguson, like I said, he just looks like he's up and coming, and I mean, it's not like we're talking about a rookie here. We're talking about a guy who had a big finish to the year last year. So sure. I mean, what's his price?
Plus 110.
Yeah, I mean, again, will he catch 6 touchdowns this year of the 50 that Prescott is going to throw? Well, let's give 15 of them to Lamb. All right, well, who's catching the other 35? It's not Ezekiel Elliott. It's not. There are other wideouts who aren't very good. The backup type, no. I mean, the tight end is their second target, a proven guy around the goal line. I could easily see him getting into double digits in touchdowns. So, yeah, I like him.
All right, that's going to be our list. And I'm going to actually bet this right now. Dave, I'm going to throw $10 on it for you as well. How about that? So, Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Dalton Kincaid, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Jake Ferguson, all for 6 touchdowns. And each of us, with our $10 each, stands to win $4,245. How about that?
Well, you can just add that to my big salary.
All right, so we are locked in on that bet. I'll screenshot that to you at some point. That'll give you some rooting interest for the season. All right, just for the sake of other tickets, let's just run down a few more of these players, and we'll actually do the running backs next week when we do the week 1 games. As we are at college football crunch time here. Let's see here. Kyle Pitts. What do you think about him? 6 touchdowns.
Does the radio silence indicate anything?
Yes, that would say.
I'll tell you what. I mean,
this could be his best season by far. And that's not a stretch to say because he hasn't had a good season yet. So
and perhaps when you play fantasy football, there's positives and negatives in terms of being, does this make you a better NFL fan or a worse fan? Because now you're not rooting for your home team as much as you would be if you didn't have all these other interests in the other team. Is that good or bad? Compared to what you're learning about the rest of the league by watching more games and watching these guys. I really thought Kyle Pitts was going to have a really good NFL career. Now, say what you want about he hasn't had a quarterback or what have you. I watched Falcons games as much as I could when I had him on my fantasy team a couple of years ago as a fairly high pick. And I didn't see anything there. I saw a guy who thinks he's a wide receiver, but doesn't have wide receiver speed and doesn't think he's a tight end, so he doesn't like to block. So he's this tight end that you spread out from the line of scrimmage and almost have to use as like a wide receiver. He gets a lot of coverage from safeties and strong safeties and good cover linebackers. He doesn't get open against those kinds of guys because nobody's ever taught him how to run a pattern. It's like, well, I can see his high school coach or his college coach saying, well, if you just line up here next to the tackle, they won't identify you as this guy who's this great athlete, and you run down the middle, and they'll try to cover you with a middle linebacker, and you're way faster than him. You'll get behind him. You'll score all these touchdowns. Well, that doesn't work in the NFL. I mean, you've got to run good patterns. You've got to do things to disguise yourself, especially if you're a tight end. Sneak behind the line of scrimmage, do things to get open. I didn't see any of this from him. I just saw a guy who said, you know what, I'm going to stand over here on the left side, just throw me the ball, and and I'll do the rest. Well, he never got open, and so he said, well, they had a terrible quarterback. I don't care if they had Brady. They weren't. He wasn't. Again, I'm watching this guy play after play after play. And they're looking his way, and they throw the ball, and it was intended for him, but he had two guys like right next to him. Like, will you please get open one time? And so I was very, very, very disappointed in his overall ability to get open. And I don't know why that's changed at all. He's the same guy. He was terrible last year. He was terrible the year before. Yeah, they've had a better quarterback this year, but guess what? You still got to get open. I don't see it. I've mentioned this before. I have him on my fantasy draft list. I have a category for do not draft.
Right.
I have one tight end on that list.
Kyle.
And yes, and the best thing I can say about Kyle Pitts is if he gets drafted before Ferguson, that's good for me because that just means Ferguson has slipped down a little bit farther. So maybe I should retract everything I said and said, "Oh my God, I think he's going to be great this year," and then get people to pick him in fantasy so I can get Ferguson. But no, I'm as down on Kyle Pitts as anybody, anybody in the world.
A player who's emerged, getting better with age, is David Njoku. 6 touchdowns for him.
I'm not a fan of the Cleveland offense, and I'd like to believe that Watson is a better quarterback than he was last year. Maybe he was still knocking some of the rust off.
Yeah, we got to see.
And what have you. Cooper, Cooper is a very, very good receiver. But yet, if you looked at my fantasy draft list, you wouldn't see him in an area where his numbers last year indicate he should be. Their star running back is injured and not playing at least the first half of the season, as far as I can tell. This is a team that arguably has the best defense in all of football. There's really no reason for them to start winging the ball all over the field, especially if their quarterback isn't playing up to what people thought he was going to be doing. And so I really want no part of that offense.
Any of the 49ers. Kittle's at plus 110, Debo's plus 105. And I guess if there is going to be one running back who's going to get 6 touchdown receptions, it's going to be McCaffrey, I guess, plus 140. Any of Ayuk's on here? He's the favorite of mine.
Well, again, we're this is a team that
Wow.
runs the ball in a lot.
Yep.
They spread the ball around a lot. I mean, when all said and done, would it shock me if all four of those guys you mentioned there had 6 touchdowns? Wouldn't shock me one bit. I don't think any of them are going to get 10 touchdowns. And that's just, receiving wise. Just because they spread the ball or they get down by the goal line, yeah, they're as likely to swing it out to McCaffrey or to throw to Kittle, who's one of these tight ends that I talked about, who knows how to get open, has a nice relationship with the quarterback. I can't recommend any of them.
How about Jalen Waddle plus 110?
Again,
Home run hitter. Yep.
Yeah, not the kind of guy that I want. Miami is a team that they're going to score a ton of touchdowns. Fantasy football this year, you're going to want a Dolphin on your team. I'm way higher on Achane than almost anybody out there. In fact, don't tell anybody. But my number one draft strategy in fantasy this year is draft Achane in the 3rd round. I don't care who I got in round 1. I don't care who I got in round 2. I'm going after Achane in round 3. And I just hope he's there. I mean, I've been at one mock draft I was in. He went in the 2nd round, but yet his ADP is around 40. So you would think he'd be there throughout the 3rd round of a 10-team draft. That's, if you talk to me after my draft and ask how it went, I'll tell you right now, it went well if Achane was available to me in the 3rd round. It did not go well if he wasn't available to me in round 3. I'm just counting on that happening. But anyway, my point is that this team scores a lot of running touchdowns. I mean, between him and Mostert, they even brought in a 3rd guy this year. It's supposed to be real dynamic. They get a lot of, you don't find them in 1st and goal 3-yard line very often because Tyreek Hill has scored from 45 yards out, because Mostert's run 40 yards, because Achane's run 60 yards. They get a lot of long distance touchdowns. And if you're not going to get 6 receiving touchdowns from 50 yards out. You've got to be the guy who gets the ball thrown to him at least once a game. Like I said, with Evans and Metcalf, you can pencil it in. At least once a game, they're going to get that ball lobbed to them at the goal line. Over the course of 17 games, you're going to get your 6 touchdowns on those plays alone. Waddle will never have the ball lobbed to him at the goal line. His touchdowns are going to have to come from 20 yards in and out. He's good enough to get 6 touchdowns that way. Tyreek Hill's good enough to get 6 or more touchdowns that way. It's just the harder way to do it. And I'd rather, some of the guys that we talked about earlier, they're going to be targeted a lot more down by the goal line. And I just think that's the way you got to go.
Mark Andrews, we could put him on a list.
Absolutely. And Mark Andrews is a perfect example of a guy who less glamorous. He's not gonna catch a 60-yarder for you. But I tell you what, they get down inside the 10-yard line. I had him on my fantasy team last year. Now, granted, he got injured. But while he was healthy, I'd watch the game. I'd scream at Jackson, "Well, you throw the ball to Andrews more often." He didn't. He doesn't throw the ball to Andrews nearly as much as he should. But I'll tell you what, when they get down by that goal line, there's, that message that's coming in from the sideline in his helmet, it's subliminal for him. Andrews. And sure enough, they get down there, and all of a sudden, you'd think he was the only receiver on the field. They throw the ball to him almost every time, not every play, but every time they get inside the 10, they give him one shot down there. And so he's the kind of guy, when all's said and done, he caught 5 passes for 33 yards. Whoopee. Well, guess what? He got that touchdown. he got that touchdown that he gets every other week. So, he's a 9 or 10 touchdown type of guy down by the goal line. So I like him.
All right. We'll just throw a couple more names at you.
What was his number?
Minus 185.
Minus 185. Well, that's I would hope that because he was a tight end that maybe he'd be in the plus. But they see what I see is that he gets a lot of targets down there.
Well, let's just do this. He's capable of 8, right? He's 8 touchdown scorer. That's plus 145. Who would be some other 8 touchdown scorers in that regard for you? Does Evans and DK make that list still?
Well, Evans would make the list for sure.
Yeah.
He's the number one, in my mind. He's the number one TD touchdown scorer. I mean, it's just how many times do we have to see it? It's their number one play when they get inside the 20. We got to throw at least one lob to Evans in the end zone. And shockingly, when the other team knows it's coming, he still catches it more often than not. So he would be atop my list in terms of the whiteouts. Let me think here. Okay. Jefferson to me is a guy who I just think that one of the first things we talked about when we started this exercise was a guy who's not necessarily on a real good team, a team that's going to have to play from behind a lot, the team that's going to have to throw a lot, and this guy is the guy that they're going to throw to. We saw this late last season when Jefferson came back from his injury, and even though they had bad quarterbacks last year, they were smart enough to throw the ball to him 15 times a game. It didn't matter where they were on the field. They got a running back now, Aaron Jones, who's more of a pass catcher than a runner. He's not going to run the ball in a lot. They got a quarterback who's not a quarterback, Darnold. He's not going to run the ball in a lot. You got Hawkinson who's injured. Everything says that 50%, if not more, of the plays, not just the passes, the plays down by the goal line are going through Jefferson. He's got to be, number 2 on my list behind Evans as a 6 touchdown guy. And, there's just no way, unless he gets hurt again, that he's not going to get to that number. People, don't really like Darnold as a quarterback. I'm not sure.
I mean, we could be playing quarterback again, and he scored the same.
Well, right, and we did play quarterback for Minnesota last year, and look what happened, and they still threw the ball to him a lot. So I think that he he's going to be, he should be on that list. Another guy that I mentioned a minute ago, who, based on where he's being drafted in fantasy, people are not convinced that he's, fully recovered from his injury or what have you. But a couple of years ago, didn't Cooper Kupp score like 15 touchdowns?
Yeah, he was on my list.
17 touchdowns.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he is like talked about A.J. Brown being this guy. Cooper Kupp knows how to get open at the goal line. And Nakua is a similar talent this year. All right, so he only gets half as many touchdowns as he did, 2 years ago when he had 17 or whatever. He's still going over 6 touchdowns. What if he gets hurt again? He's 2 years removed from a serious injury. He was healthy last year. I think he's going to be better this year. He's a guy who he ranks way up there on my list as well in terms of, give me your 3 surest things to score 6 touchdowns, to score 8 touchdowns, to score 10 receiving touchdowns. I'd give you Evans, Jefferson, and Cup. That would be my trifecta for 10 receiving touchdowns this year. And yeah, again, so what are we talking there? You know, even money on all three of them, or whatever. I would hope better than that, given that we've boosted it up to 10 touchdowns. But you know, I'd like to hear a price on that. There would be a certain price where I would say, okay, I'll you know, you give me 10-1 on that. You know, that's, you know, I'll take it.
I think we're going to get better than that. I'll get that in a second. Let me run this last 8 touchdown player one I came up with.
Okay.
By you. So we got Andrews, Evans, Jefferson, Cup. You know, you mentioned the Redskins quarterback's probably going to have 30 touchdowns. McLaurin will probably get 8 of those at least, right? So you can probably throw him on there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then how about Dalton Kincaid? We'll throw on there since the Bills love their tight ends.
Well, don't we already have him on the other list?
He's on the 6th list, but we'll throw him on the 8 list as well. How about that? $10 wins 3,000 on those 6 players to get 8 touchdowns.
Boy, you know how to jack these prices up.
Yeah.
Minute ago, I was thinking, gee, I'm talking about 3 guys who are even money, and now you've turned it into 1,000 to 1 or whatever 100 to 1 proposition. So hey, you know, you're a pro.
Evans, Jefferson, and Cup. Where are you, Cooper Cup? For 10 touchdowns each is 37 to 1.
Wow. That, you know, I mean, that I would have taken 10. So yeah, no, that's like I said, one guy gets injured, and this great plan that we had goes out the window. But you know, I don't know which one of those 3 is not going to get there. I mean, you know, I mean, the number of times that Jefferson's going to get the ball thrown to him this year, it's got to be the number 1 or the number 2 guy in the league. Plus the fact that, like I said, it's one thing if you're a team like the 49ers and you know, you have all these other weapons, so you have to worry about that. Or if you're so good that you're ahead by 2 or 3 touchdowns in the second half, you know, half the time during the year, and you don't throw the ball as often as other teams do. You know, that you have to be concerned about stuff like that. That's not a concern at all for someone like Jefferson, whose team is not very good. They're not going to be a 500 team this year. They don't have a great defense. They play indoors. They play a lot of high-scoring games, and that division all of a sudden has become fireworks. You know, I mean, Detroit, you know, 3 years ago was this boring team. Now all of a sudden they're one of the highest-scoring teams in the league. The Bears took over the mantle as one of the most boring teams in recent years. Well, now that's all changed, and now Green Bay has regained, you know, their mojo as a great offensive team. I mean, that in and of itself, you know, has to be, if not the highest scoring division, then maybe 1B on that list. And you got Minnesota, who's going to be behind in most of their games. They got one guy to throw the ball to. I mean, if he doesn't score 10 passing touchdowns, something's wrong.
Right.
And like I said, Cup, you know, he plays the way that you need to play in order to score this kind of number of touchdowns. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's not going to get you the 50-yard touchdown. You know, the Tyreek Hill is going to get you 6 times during the year. But I'll tell you what, Tyreek Hill isn't going to catch, you know, 4 passes in between the linebackers down by the goal line, whereas Cup is going to catch 14 of them.
All right, that's a nice ticket. I like that trifecta. All right, so we'll work on a little bit of running back stuff next week. We'll also review your fantasy. We'll have your draft this week. We'll see how that goes. And then we'll have a big slate of Week 1 NFL action. So a lot to get through next week. All right, Dave. Have a good rest of the holiday.
Okay. Yeah, I look forward to the draft.
All right, that'll do it for this week. We are full on NFL Week 1, Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Deep End Broadcasting Network. YouTube us, Deep End 757 Broadcasting. That's DEEP END 757 Broadcasting. And of course, the website links all things that we do. DeepEndBroadcasting.com. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. We are on for real. Week 1. Let's do it.
Oh, I never reach out, though.